Supervisor.
Take a seat.
It's not his car either. You guys ready?
Thank you. So we're going to start the public comment period, and once again, I'd like to remind everybody that to respect the folks that are up there speaking. Let's, if you don't mind, let's not clap after everybody that you like, and let's not boo everybody you don't like. Okay? So we're all here to try to work through an issue in our county, and the best way to do that is by being respectful of each other and listening to everybody's opinion, because everybody's opinion counts. So you ready, Susan? All right. First speaker, please.
A little bit technical difficulty. Give me 1 second here.
Oh, we don't know anything about technical difficulties. I know you had it working the whole time earlier, right? And it's just now.
Okay, my name is Kaz Tomaszewski. I'm the executive director of the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance. If anyone back there likes what I have to say, please just put a fist in the air, no clapping, as the chair requested. I agree with nearly every concern raised by the Sheriff Department and DA office. I simply disagree with many of the perceived...
Talk into it.
Hang on, I gotta make it taller. How about that?
There you go.
I agree with nearly every concern raised by the Sheriff Department and the DA's office. I simply disagree with many of the perceived causes and with the diagnosis of the connection of the above-board part of this business with the criminal element. A lot has been said on the crime and environmental damage associated with cannabis. In these instances, there are mentioned gangs, caches of weapons, cartel activity. First off, does anyone think that members of gangs and cartels are going to care what regulations you pass? They won't. This ordinance is not for them, it is for us. It is for the people doing it right. But I agree with the DA that we have a problem here. It can sometimes be difficult to tell the difference between us and them. Because, as it was mentioned, the many criminals that masquerade as legal operations under the watery definitions of Prop 215 make it difficult to distinguish. Under the old state laws, this is rampant. But to solve this problem, we don't need bans, we don't need further restrictions, we need clear definitions. We need to empower our law enforcement to tell the difference between us, to tell the good guys from the bad guys. Those definitions have been laid out very clearly in the new state laws and can be refined by you. It was also mentioned that the inherent value of cannabis is a problem and causes crime. This is also true. However, the value of cannabis is driven by the illegality of it. Illegality causes scarcity. Scarcity raises prices. When dealing with the black market, criminal enforcement is only effective when paired with the competitive production of legal industry. Otherwise, busts and seizures only serve to raise prices of the commodity in question, thus incentivizing black market participation. And it's not only the high value causing crime. It's the fact that there are growers that aren't sure that they call the sheriff. There's the fact that we can't have insurance. There's the fact that we can't get a loan. And we've talked about those issues before. There were comments made that commercial industry will somehow exacerbate cartel grows. This is simply just not the way it works. About 75 years of research since the end of alcohol prohibition show that legitimate industries de-incentivize black markets from the inside out, as I just described. It's hard to talk about this again and again as if it's a new concept. Because it is not. It was recently reasserted by the London School of Economics, one of the foremost purveyors of economic theory on the planet. It was mentioned that there was concerns about how taxation would work and where it would come from. As the county has been discussing this, we've employed no less than 4 lawyers and have consulted 3 policymakers on taxation models that could work here and be put on the ballot this coming election. It was talked about the chances of large corporate interests coming into the county via distributorships and manufactories. We've been studying the dairy industry on how to create farmer-owned cooperative companies to run those businesses ourselves and keep control in county. Most of these concerns are being addressed by our community. We're paying for it. We have proposals for you. Please give us a chance to show you how. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot today for you coming. My name is Paul Bertini, and I've been a businessman. I reside in the Arnold area for 25 years. I'm coming to you because I want our governing body to act. And I want you to act in, obviously, positive for the ordinance, and here's why. Right now, we currently have things that are under ordinance, just like this. We don't let people under the age, I hope 18, but I think I was told it was 16. At 16 years of age, as long as your parents think it's okay, or if they smoke too, well, you can buy cigarettes and do what you want. Prescription drugs. This is also under regulation and also under ordinance. But actually, we don't act on that because all of this was all done long before you guys were even little kids. But the truth that I bring to you is that without an act, without us organizing what we do, well, it'll just continue. I mean, let's face it, the boat left in 1960. I'm the youngest of five. I'm 55, so I know what my older brothers and sisters went through during that whole tie-dye era. And I'm bound to tell you that this generation actually has stepped way away from the tie-dye area, and we're actually in business. And this is part of it. The last thing I'd like to say is most of what the police have to deal with has to do with this. Yet this as well is also controlled under ordinance. You can't sell it at certain times, and you can't drink it at certain times, and there's places you can't have it. And I agree that we should also have those same ordinances when it comes to the use of marijuana, especially for medical marijuana use. I'm not here for the other. However, I do stand for that as well. You see, the truth is, I just want it to be the truth. Thanks for listening.
Just bend it down like that.
Like that? How's that work?
That'll work.
That work? Okay. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a triple bypass, but I needed to be here today. And I'm Bob Bowerman. I live in Valley Springs. I've been here 16 years. I'm a retired business owner, a homeowner, a voter, and also the founder of Sacramento NORML, the National Organization Reforming Marijuana Laws. I was the one that broke the ice with the League of Cities and the Police Chiefs Association in working on MESA, the regulations, okay? What we had in common on this was just a couple of real straight beliefs, and I'm sure everybody here will agree the same thing. First of all, we want to get pot out of the schools. We want to get cannabis away from the drug dealers and out of the parking lots. And more important for Calaveras County, we want to get rid of the illegal cartel-type grows on public lands, whether it be BLM, state parks, what have you. That has to stop. One of the things that we're seeing as the benefit of the regulations, and by the way, the regulation bill that you guys put together fits the state regulation bills like a glove. It's perfect, okay? But one of the benefits that we're seeing from this in other markets, okay, is a common enemy. Law enforcement is all of a sudden working with cannabis growers to get rid of the cartels and the illegal grows. This is what's happening up north, okay? This is what will happen here in Calaveras. We do have a cartel problem down here. There are a lot of illegal grows. My grandson is 17. He's in Boy Scouts. He leads scout troops everywhere. And no, these people, if they're guarding their grows on public land with a weapon, I'm sorry, they're a terrorist. They're not just breaking the law. It's more serious than that. But you folks, with the regulations that you're putting together, are going to help end that. Not completely. It'll never work completely. But we're going to be freeing up law enforcement so that they can put their focus where it needs to be. They're going to get allies that they never thought they'd ever have. And we, here in Calaveras County, have an opportunity to go forward. Are we good? And this is for medical, okay? Recreation is a whole different story. Sean Parker and his billions of dollars, we met with him a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I do believe we're going to get recreational here too. But even that was written right hand in hand with the MRSA rules. So everything fits like a glove, and that's what it takes to make everything work. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. Thank the law enforcement for being here too, because they're a major part of this. Thanks.
Bob Arnold, I apologize for my earlier outburst. I feel that we don't have enough respect for our officers who put their lives on the line daily. I got my information from Google and 35 years as a classroom teacher. My desire is for the board to have a very clear picture of what this is going to do to our youthful population. The federal laws don't acknowledge banks, marijuana. Banks don't process handling deductions. Are you going to have ordinance for banking, transportation, potting, growing, marketing? How is verification and collection going to take place? Alpine and Amador, along with Minnesota and Idaho, have said no because of the moral, religious, and ethical and scruples involved. Will you be making your judgment on selective criteria that you like, or will you put our children ahead of the program? In Colorado, some 330 school officials, first responders, and health professionals clearly stated marijuana was, is, and still a major #1 problem in schools. Rocky Mountain High School had students increased to the emergency room from 29 to 38% in 1 month. Hospitals are seeing more children and adults by potential doses of edibles, marijuana. Infant exposure from the age of birth to 5 has increased 268%. What we need there is more adult supervision, of course. Stoned drivers under the influence of marijuana has increased by 12.5%. Counties and states that border Colorado have increased the citations from 6 to 20 for marketing, processing, transporting, selling, making, you name it. That has increased from 6 to 20.
30 seconds.
Home exposures, producing gummy bears, hashish, it's all been part of the other rules. Despite galaxy of legal regulations related to marijuana, stores across the state, prosecutors say a dangerous illicit market thrives and persists. I wish you would consider putting our youth first before you balance the books. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Whitkey, and I've lived in the county for close to 25 years. I've raised my son here as a single mother, and we have an organization called Sun-Grown Meds. We are in the process of getting all of our state ducks in a row, and we are very dedicated to staying in this county and doing this business right. We have been here a long time. We love it here. We survived the Butte fire, just barely. We need every opportunity that this county can allow us so that we can rebuild our lives. I am begging you, do not ban commercial cultivation here. There are good business people here who want an opportunity to make a living for our families and for our grandchildren. We care about the youth, and I promise you that even though you will see a few more emergency room visits when this happens, this is a non-lethal substance. There have been 0 mortalities as a result of these kids showing up in emergency rooms. They're taking their kids to the emergency rooms because it's legal and because they do not face sanctions when their kids accidentally ingest. Prohibition kills people. Taxing and regulating will save lives. Grapes are not an innocuous thing. We have a drunk driving problem here. We can address all of these issues that people who are afraid have brought up. But we can do this sanely, rationally, effectively. and we can have a really wonderful new industry here that will not ruin our reputation. We will prosper. Our children will be able to go to college. There are so many benefits to this. There is a downside, but there is a much bigger upside. I implore you to please consider commercial cultivation here as a viable industry. And I thank you for your time and for all of your efforts in helping the Butte family survivors rebuild. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paula Meyer. I'm a 48-year-old mom of 2 young children, a licensed and certified physician assistant with 25 years experience in emergency medicine, and I'm also a businesswoman and a future cannabis grower. I had a beautiful presentation plan, which I scrapped completely, and want to address the concerns raised by the DA and the sheriff. The DA stated that anecdotal evidence is important because our county is so small. Respectfully, this flies against all accepted rules of reason and logic. I'm uniquely qualified to address this because quality medicine is evidence-based, not anecdotally based. Anecdotal evidence is the weakest of all evidence when with logic and reasoning. It's evidence from anecdotes. There are only one or a few anecdotes presented. There is a larger chance that they may be unreliable due to cherry-picked or otherwise non-representative samples of typical cases. In medicine, Levaquin, 5% of us would have a dangerous side effect to Levaquin. If I stood here and told you the devastating, horrible side effect I had from Levaquin with horrible muscle aches and pains, you would be very emotionally moved by my suffering and pain. You would even consider banning it. But when you look at the 500 people behind me that all have sepsis in the ICU, and Levaquin is the drug that will save their lives, that's evidence-based medicine, that Levaquin saves lives. Sorry, getting on the medicine, just trying to point out the different types of logic. Anecdotally, as I'm slamming anecdotal medicine evidence, anecdotally, been in the same ER in Los Angeles County for 25 years, the worst things that children ingest are diabetic meds. Those are one pill kill. We have not had an increase in RER and marijuana in youth, and the few cases we have had have cleared within a few hours as opposed to alcohol, which takes 10 to 12 hours and usually admission. Thankfully, we don't have to recreate the wheel. Let me present some evidence-based data published by the Colorado and Washington states. We need to be very careful of the resources we use to assess the data. The gold standard is the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System. This source of information shows positive results in Colorado and Washington, and most likely other states that I didn't have time to research. Violent crime in Colorado has decreased by 18% in Denver. Most other crimes either decrease or remain stable. While it's terrifying to hear about a triple homicide, we cannot extrapolate that limited information to predict future events. In November 2012, Sheriff Tom Allman of Mendocino County warned that an onslaught of crime was headed to Colorado. That never occurred. Looking at remote history, ending alcohol prohibition also ended bootlegging and illegal activity. To compare legal growers to cartel growers is a complete non sequitur. They are two separate entities. We're at a crossroads. We need to rebuild our county, and we have the opportunity of a lifetime. The Wall Street Journal states that this is one of the biggest startups possible, and let's not miss it. We can build a beautiful county.
Thank you.
I had so much better things to say.
My name is Chloe Schufelt. I live in Murphys, and I think regulation is in the best interest of everyone. I prepared a statement. This is my 10th year in the county. I live, work, shop, and vote in Calaveras and consider myself a contributing member of this community. I am proud to live here. It is beautiful, and it is a wonderful place to raise a family. Over the past 10 years, I've witnessed a general shift in the country, a softening toward the medical acceptance and general use of cannabis, and do not believe this trend is going anywhere. Additionally, I see great potential in the wise regulation of this burgeoning industry. To ignore it exists, to equate it with truly damaging substances, to pretend that it will go away or can be zoned out of existence is naive and short-sighted, especially in a county that is so poor and so well suited for the agricultural production of a crop that is already headed for state regulation. As Salinas is to salad greens, Calaveras is to cannabis. The climate and growing conditions are ideal. The demand is real. Every year I look at the county ag report and see timber, cattle, and wine grapes in the top 3. These figures completely ignore the incredible revenue generated by medical cannabis. Bring this revenue into the light. Give credit to this industry. Figure out how to benefit from it even more. I believe the majority of people cultivating cannabis in this county want to work within the law and are looking forward to partnering with the county to comply with laws and help to shape smart and effective regulation. There is, as with any agricultural crop, the potential for environmental pollution. Putting regulations in place to ensure growers comply, like vineyards, wineries, olive orchards, and other things, is smart and creates a level playing field and provides an incentive for growers to educate themselves about best management practices. The largest vineyard in this county is more on the scale of a small vineyard in Napa or Sonoma. This is a region of small-scale, family-operated endeavors. This makes us unique, and smart regulation will extend this tradition into cannabis. Work with the people of this community, people who are invested in keeping their neighborhoods safe, their schools and libraries operating, their waterways clean and safe for swimming. Providing the permits, regulations, and opportunities for legal cannabis cultivation will benefit everyone. Know who is doing what in the county. Provide people the chance to contribute more to the region we all love. Join the state and the country in the evolving attitude toward cannabis and its place in medicine and society. These coming years are Calaveras' opportunity to establish smart and progressive regulations for an industry that is not going to go anywhere. Thank you.
Hi, first I'd like to thank everybody here for giving me the opportunity to speak and for everybody coming back after lunch. I know it's been a long day. My name is Lori Downing, and I've been a member of the community and a resident of this county for over 25 years. I too vote here, shop here, live here, and have raised 5 boys. I am a medical marijuana user who suffers from multiple ailments and diseases. It is necessary for me to have the ability to access organically grown and affordable product in order for me to live with the chronic pain that I face daily. I was injured 6 years ago, and at that time I was sent through a battery of doctors that just did all kinds of tests and gave me so many different drugs. It caused serotonin syndrome, which is a legal overdose. It was no fault of mine. I did not take anything wrong on that medication, but the medication caused too much serotonin to be in my brain, and I wasn't able to speak or walk or write for quite some time. It was extremely scary. Medical marijuana has never caused anything like that for me. After that happened, they sent me to what's called a QME. That's a qualified medical examiner by the state of California. And you have to wonder, well, if these guys are the qualified ones, who are the ones you were sending me to all along? But nonetheless, those 2 doctors both recommended that the only thing I can do for the type of pain I'm in and the issues that I am dealing with is to have medical marijuana. And the one doctor went so far as to say, you must eat it and not smoke it, because smoking it will not last long enough. So therefore, edibles is what I am recommending to you. It takes a lot of medical marijuana to make the edibles, a lot more than it does to smoke it. From there, I went on, because I used to make my own soap, I started to make a lotion. My doctor kept giving me all kinds of different lotions, prescription lotions that were supposed to help with the lack. I have no cartilage in various parts of my body, and it's bone on bone. And I made my own lotion, and that takes a lot of medical marijuana. And I had hoped that some of our speakers that were here earlier today would still be here, so I could ask them, how do you come up with only, for the small-scale medical marijuana home user, how do you come up with that limit of 12 plants and growing for only 2 people? My husband also uses the lotion. It has stopped his sleep apnea. I doubt it cured it, but it stopped it. Anyway, I am just asking that you will look at this openly and compassionately with all the knowledge and love you have for the county and the people in it, and that you listen to all these people and you actually go home and really consider this, because this is important not just for revenue. I've been to some of their meetings, and they pay their taxes, they grow organically, and we lost our home in the fire, and we lost everything in there, and When the cleanup crew is gone, who's going to keep the businesses in Mountain Ranch alive? Who's going to continue to shop there and spend their money there? I think it's the commercial grower, and I hope that we can look into that. Thank you all for your time.
Hi again. My name is Manuelita Arrieta, and I'm a 15-year full-time resident of Arnold. I'm a retired real estate agent. I've been listening to everything that everybody is saying, but I'm sorry I cannot agree with most of it. Our community is quite troubled over the addition of another pot store in Arnold. We didn't need the first one, and we certainly don't need a second one in close proximity to it. Our move to Arnold was based on leaving the chaos of the Bay Area and to a place we felt secure. But that changes with the possibility of marijuana shops and cultivation being opened here. Is it possible that much of this marijuana sold to people or supposedly used medically is then given or resold to family, friends, or others? I think it is. And I believe opening the shop will bring an influx of undesirables to our town. I gave my testimony at the first Board of Supervisors meeting on Little Tree by relating our son's use and the sorrow and heartache it caused my husband Al and me, and still does to this day. Smoking marijuana is only to numb the senses and to act in belligerent, childish, and immoral ways. And I say this because I have witnessed it. I don't say it because I don't know what it is. It is a selfish act that brings destructiveness to families and can and does lead to more harmful drugs. And again, I have witnessed it in my family. Why would people come from the valley to Arnold to buy medical marijuana when these shops, I presume, are also available in the big towns? We don't want this shop in our town. We must not agree to medical or recreational use just because our county will profit from it. The way to earn more tax dollars is to bring legal businesses into Arnold or Calaveras County that will benefit the community, not endanger it. What is more important, the will of the people or the money earned from these marijuana shops? And I firmly believe that whatever ordinances are taken up, they're not going to work. They're not going to work. They've never worked in any county, in any state. You're still going to have the same problems that the sheriff and the district attorney brought up. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. My name is George Preston. I want to thank everybody for being here. I am a resident of this county for over 50 years. I'm a veteran of the United States Army, and I am a supporter of the medical use of marijuana. I have been using marijuana since the 70s for PTSD and other numerous injuries I've incurred over my lifetime. There has been no prescription drugs that aren't in danger of me relapsing into using harder drugs again. I was a heroin addict in the Army, therefore most painkillers are just off the table for me from the beginning. I was first arrested in this county in 1978 for growing medicinal marijuana. Things haven't changed that much. There's still people being arrested. They talk about supply and demand. When I go by Little Trees often and want to get some medicine, they are not open. So one shop is not enough. We have to look at where the state's going and where we're going nationally and think about that seriously. Do we want to take the time and money to construct a set of rules that are going to be more than likely out of date when the elections come in November? I would say that most cultivators like myself think of sustainability as the first thing. That means we don't grow with pesticides. That means most pesticides. Everything that I use is posted on the Washington State Department of Agriculture's data sheet. It tells you what's appropriate, what's safe to use in this industry. Rather than fighting it, putting people back underground, because that's where they're going to go. Let's make no mistakes about it. You're not going to stop this with bad ordinances. You need to think wide term. Rural residential is more than appropriate to grow marijuana, and more than 12 plants. It's been done for years. Show me the evidence of where people that are on RR land have habitually destroyed it through their practices of farming. The evidence isn't there. This is about the big cartels. You want our help? We want your help. Let's work together and come to a common understanding. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Berdichowski. I've been a resident of Calaveras County, D2, for over 10 years. I support the tax and regulation of cannabis in Calaveras. There are not many job opportunities in this area. Many people who go to school here and become adults are almost forced to move away in search of livelihood. And many never return home because there are no opportunities for work. Regulating Calaveras would create jobs on the farms, in transportation, distribution, the lab facilities, the nurseries, and dispensaries. I believe in Calaveras, in keeping working families, their votes, and their dollars here in the county. I want this county to have every opportunity possible to reach its full potential. The Butte fire has already forced many to leave Calaveras because they cannot start their lives over here. But there are very many people who are staying, who want to stay, and continue to give support to the community. I support the economic growth the industry will bring, as well as growth in the community. I have witnessed many people come together to support and help one another recover from the Butte fire disaster, growers and non-growers alike. Wrapping their arms around each other, listening, and helping to heal one another. The majority of them are growers, this is true. Sorry. But the fact is that we care about the community and the people who reside here, one and all. An appropriate ordinance would drive out the unwanted criminal behavior, protect us, the growers, and our neighbors from environmental damages, frivolous land abuse, and provide guidelines for responsible land development and water use. With state ground rules coupled with a county code and the water board's instructions, cannabis in Calaveras could reach its full potential. We are here and we want this and we want to do it right. Thank you to the board and the council for taking us seriously and giving us the opportunity and the chance to make it here in Calaveras. Thank you.
I forgot my reading glasses. Hi, my name is Frank Romero, and I have been a resident of Calaveras County for over 30 years. I'm a law-abiding citizen at 66 years of age, and proudly...
Reading glasses.
There's Americans all over the place. Thank you very much. Where was I? I'm a law-abiding citizen at 66 years of age and proudly served my country in the United States Air Force and 2 years assisting the U.S. Secret Service. Quite frankly, I'm puzzled by the agenda brought forth by fellow citizens trying to ban legal cannabis growing operations under established laws here in Calaveras County. This beautiful county is just that. Tourism seems to satisfy those who venture here from time to time. We all know that industry in this part of the state is pretty much non-existent, along with jobs which generate real revenue for the county. It is now undeniable that the biggest projected income generating industry in the history of the state of California is cannabis farming. Calaveras County is a perfect growing climate for cannabis farming. The time is right to make a decision as to the future of the county. In most of my years on this earth, I've watched this country make serious mistakes, which have cost U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars because of not understanding the consequences of poor legislation. We as U.S. citizens need to understand the importance of moving forward by learning the lessons from the past. I read a quote just the other night from a true president, Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason and that it attempts to control a man's appetite and make a crime out of things that are not crimes. This industry needs regulation, not prohibition. The rest of the state is moving forward in the right direction along with Governor Jerry Brown. The county needs this, and I'm confident this board will make a key decision to make Calaveras more prosperous than gold or lumber ever did. Let's get this operation going, unlike the casinos, and bring amazing revenue back to the county, along with prosperity. Thank you, the Board of Supervisors, for the opportunity to express my concern over this very important matter.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Andrew Ward. I'm from Arnold. I'm here today to read a statement to the board on behalf of Mr. Jason Hauer, the owner of Ebbets Pass Lumber Company and the Ace Hardware in Arnold.
Closer to the mic, please.
Mr. Hauer is attending a family matter today, and he can't be here. He sends his apologies. I write today regarding an issue of critical importance to our county and my business, medical cannabis. My family owns three businesses in Arnold and employs over 25 families, all of whom have a living wage, access to health care, retirement funds, and a professional work environment. Please know a cultivation ban will be disastrous for my businesses and the families it supports. I'm in a unique position to understand this issue as I sell growing supplies directly to growers, and I know many of them personally. Most of them remain in the shadows, so that their impact on our county often goes unnoticed by most business owners. I can tell you that when I walk into a restaurant and I see that 1/3 of the tables are filled with growers or their families, or when I stand in line at a grocery store and recognize growers and their families all around me, I know a cultivation ban would be catastrophic for our economy. On the Highway 4 corridor between Vallecito and Dorrington, I know of at least 75 growers, each of them employing many people and pumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into our economy. I see these growers on a daily basis, most often for goods unrelated to their grow operations, school supplies for their kids, kitchen gadgets, paint for their residents, and so on. My family then takes our profits and redistributes it to hundreds of local businesses and purveyors. The aggregate economic impact of this industry is certainly in the tens of millions of dollars in Calaveras County. There are certainly legitimate concerns surrounding this industry, especially the environmental impacts. This is why we are all begging for regulation. Please trust that most growers would jump at the chance to come out of the closets and out from the shadows to be open contributors to our communities. Here we have a golden opportunity to finally do something positive for our county's economy. We should welcome this industry with open arms and thank participants for their investment in our communities. Doing the opposite would be disastrous for all of us. I urge you to support permissive regulation of cannabis cultivation in Calaveras County. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this critically important issue. The impacts of this decision will have real-life and long-lasting consequences. Sincerely, Jason Hauer, owner, Ebbets Pass Lumber Company, Ace Hardware.
My name is Jennifer Smith. I'm a resident of Murphy's. Yes, sir. Speaking out of District 3, where there's over 100 projected groves, people that vote, people that pay taxes, people that generate revenue and spend their money in this county. I alone spent $75,000 last year at that aforementioned business. I'm just one person. There was talk earlier today of the culture of the cannabis farmer. I'd like to point out this cannabis movement is a culture of lawyers, doctors, business professionals, and most importantly, farmers. Growing is abundantly taking place in our county. Regulation is the most positive and productive way to address the elephant in the room. Regulation allows for increased revenue derived from permits, taxes, creating more prosperity in this county. The decriminalization of the act of growing allows for law enforcement to spend their time looking for illegal grows and redirecting their focus on cartels. With regulation, we can continue to spend more money in this county. Retail outlets, restaurants. We spend money with contractors, electricians. Regulation supports not only existing businesses, but brings new businesses to the county. Regulation allows for open conversations, sharing of best practices so that we as a group can be better stewards of the land and share information. Regulation allows us to participate in the political landscape and bring about positive movement. Cannabis brings increased tourism. Look at Colorado. There's actually cannabis tourism groups. Much like Calaveras County benefits from wine tourism, cannabis would bring that same benefit. There was talk earlier of the decrease of home values and land values. Anybody that's tried to buy land recently in Calaveras County will clearly rebuke that. Our realtors are in a landfall right now. This is an opportunity for Calaveras County to be a leader in an exciting and burgeoning industry. This industry is active, and we're asking to be a part of this positive process. California law has set forth guidelines, and we ask that Calaveras County, at the very least, maintain these guidelines and be a leader in this industry. Thank you.
My name is Shirley Holligan. I've lived in this county over 40 years, and I was a teacher here for 25 years. I had no idea I was going to be here today, except I was driving down the highway out there, and I saw all these cars over here, and I said, brother, something's going on over there. I better go find out what in the heck it is. So I did. Okay. I'm very concerned about our nation and what is happening. We seem to be going the way of many fallen cultures. I am totally in favor of the use of marijuana for medical use. People that are truly suffering should be allowed to use anything that can help to manage their pain and other symptoms. It is a good thing, but the general use of it for the slightest problem is not okay. I am a Christian, and I feel that it's immoral in some ways to try to make your mind be someplace else and not know what in the heck you're doing. And I think that that's what happens when you are on marijuana. You are not who you really are. And that really concerns me. Also, I was a teacher for 25 years, and it concerns me that children may be using this substance, and it is not good for them. It is not good for our brains. It is not good for our culture, because in the end, we are going to have more and more people. We already have Alzheimer's and dementia. Well, I think this is going to lead to even more of it. It really concerns me. Just because you can make a lot of money by growing and selling it does not make it a good idea. In years to come, we may add many people to our health care load as a result of its wide use. We should protect our bodies and minds as much as possible. It seems to me that you are promoting extensive use by our society, the slippery slope to our destruction. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joan Wilson. I am a mother. I am a voter in District 1. I am a mother of an Eagle Scout and an Army veteran. Community means a lot to my family. The people in my neighborhood consist of retired people, animal people, doctors, lawyers, firefighters, prison workers, ministers, in fact, of many faiths, clergy, business owners, ranchers, and medical marijuana growers. There are at least 12. I'm surrounded by medical marijuana growers. I am one myself. You can see them driving around my neighborhood. They are the loveliest neighbors I have ever had. My neighbors who do not grow marijuana also think they are lovely neighbors. They are clean. They are ecology minded. In fact, it takes more water to water your vineyard than it does to grow marijuana. Also, most of them are organic. In fact, all of the ones that I know that are around us and myself are organic. I cannot use Western medicine. Most of the time it makes me sick. I do have a condition that medical marijuana does help. I think that we are probably going towards something more along the lines of beer and wine. I think it needs to be regulated. We do not want to see it in the hands of children. We want responsible people, and I think that we have the board to do that. You guys are on the cutting edge of this. It is going to be a business, Please don't forget the little mom and pop. Don't forget the mothers and the fathers that are out here, and the mothers and the fathers to be that are out here, and the grandparents, because they are going to be grandparents. As for what it's going to bring into this community, we have an opportunity for the community to make money. 30 seconds. That is the bottom line. It will bring in jobs. There will be taxes paid because it will be legal. And above that, I have a couple of other things. I think crime could drop because of it, because we are being responsible with it. I don't think people want to drive around drunk, and I don't think they want to drive around too stoned to be able to drive. Unfortunately, it will happen. And that is why we have law enforcement. I also think that I also want you to know that you cannot pick a bud off of a plant and use it. It has to be aged, processed, much like tobacco.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay? Thank you.
Hello, I'm George Farley again, and I again want to thank you for your time, your service to our county. You know, I am really enjoying this exercise in democracy too, really getting to hear everybody speak, so thank you for that opportunity too. Again, I represent 95 citizens in our county. I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm thankful to God that my cancer was detected early and it was removed before it could spread through my body and kill me. But our beautiful county is not so fortunate. Marijuana is a cancer that is spreading throughout our county. Just like cancer needs a good blood supply to spread, we have a blood supply here called greed that enables this to spread in our county. So we're calling on you, Chairman Edson, Vice Chair Wright, Supervisor Ponte, Supervisor Kearney, Supervisor Oliveira, to be our county's healthcare team and to treat this cancer by way of strict regulations and to restrict its growth while enforcing 100% compliance. It will take your wisdom, discernment, and courage to do this to keep our county alive. I have a friend who was nearly forced out of his decades-lease building by an absentee owner who told him that he was raising his lease 300% to accommodate an indoor pot growing operation. As the word got out, the operatives decided that this could influence you supervisors in a negative way. So now he only has to pay for an 80% increase. Such a deal. And the operatives are going full bore on the changes to the surrounding buildings in anticipation of your votes. This is going on throughout our county. What will you do to stop these strong-arm tactics from forcing out many small businesses from our county? It will continue if you approve these proposed ordinances. I recently talked with a teacher from Bret Harte High School. He said that if people saw what he sees every day of the effects of marijuana, they would be appalled and be strongly opposed to it. If you approve the proposed ordinances, will the effect on our youth diminish? Absolutely not. Increased availability leads to increased use. Do you really want to literally change the landscape of our beautiful county? Do you want to be responsible for that if you approve the proposed ordinances and zoning changes? We all know that drugs plus money equals violence. Are we supposed to just forget about the recent triple murder over marijuana cultivation? Do we really want more violence? One of the primary functions of government is the safety and protection of its citizens. Please tell us specifically how these proposed ordinances will protect and ensure the safety of Calaveras County citizens. Specifically, we urge you to keep the current zoning and application process intact. We urge you not to sell out the soul of our county, and please consider its negative effects. Or is this more important to you? It's your choice. We ask you to do the right thing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, George.
Good afternoon, Bill McManus of the Calaveras Project. First of all, I'd like to thank the DA and the sheriff for the presentations they made today. Some of us have been aware of a lot of that information for a long time. I sometimes wonder how widely it was disseminated. Based on what the sheriff and the DA had to say today, I find myself almost shocked, and it's hard to shock me, that the ordinance that was put forward, the draft ordinance, could be so far out of step with what the people in this county, department heads, the sheriff, and the DA would say. It's unbelievable. I don't know how an expansive, liberal gift to the pot industry could make it to this board in light of what the professionals have said about it. Right now, with the ordinance, the draft ordinance that's coming forward, citizens that live in rural residential areas are under siege from more pot growing. Yes, they have to bring the growing back 30 feet from the property line. Those who have lived in pot areas can tell you that the smell travels a lot further than 30 feet, sometimes a mile or more, depending on the breeze. The other thing that disturbs me is that this ordinance also opens the door for pot shops to be opened in virtually every commercial building in this county. Back in the day when 2830 was passed, that's the dispensary ordinance, they used the CP zoning to try to limit the number of pot shops that were in the county. So this will get rid of all that. And I've also heard a lot of misinformation. I've heard it for a long time about the money that comes from marijuana and why we want to take marijuana away from sick people and all this and that. First of all, I think the board ought to prohibit all marijuana activities in this county with the exception of the patient exemption, which I don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Stedfeld about it. I think AB 21 made it part of that. You can't ban it, but you can control it. That's the way I read it. I don't know. I don't have a problem with people growing 3 or 4 plants to get them through the year. They are not the people that's going to sell the children. They are not the people that's going to be selling on the market. According to the Calaveras Cannabis Cartel's own numbers, they say that there's $100 million worth of marijuana being grown in this county. Do you really honestly think that is medical marijuana? Can you in any way stretch your imagination around that is medical marijuana? No, it's industrial scale, commercialized marijuana. And if a few people can make a few bucks off it, great for them. But they don't need to destroy our county in the process. I urge.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Valerie, and I am the Secretary for the California Education, Science, Agriculture, and Research Coalition out of Stanislaus County.
Could you talk in the mic, please?
Oh, sorry. We are working with our local governments to work toward adopting ordinances and regulation, just like the one you have in front of you today. We are a grassroots community coalition whose mission is twofold: ensure the safe access to cannabis medicine granted to patients by the passing of Prop 215 20 years ago, and to advocate for responsible cannabis cultivation as the viable and valuable agricultural commodity that it truly can be. We and our supporters urge you to adopt the excellent ordinances you have before you in favor of regulated cannabis cultivation. As you can see, cannabis cultivation is already here. Law enforcement may try to use scare tactics to dissuade you, but you need only to look to the overwhelmingly positive results in other areas that have embraced regulation to see that it is truly the best choice. A ban does nothing more than strengthen a black market that will never truly go away. If prohibition worked, you wouldn't have the audience that you have in the room today. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for this opportunity today. My name is Ron Shaner. I've been a resident of Calaveras County for the past 42 years. I cared for my father for the last 2 years of his life. His physician recommended medical marijuana to mitigate the debilitating side effects of other medications that he was prescribed. My father had never smoked anything in his entire life, and he refused to smoke cannabis as well. With the help of folks in CPR, which is Calaveras Patient Resources, he received free edible medicine. He was then able to overcome nausea and soon discontinued the medications that had caused him so many problems. Medical marijuana has been legal in California for 20 years. Please help the people involved in this industry by proper zoning, regulations, and taxation. No conditional use permits, please. That would only delay the long overdue clarification of our laws and keep otherwise honest folks in a quasi-legal limbo. I have spoken with many of our community's residents who are involved in the cultivation and preparation of medical marijuana, who want to come out of the shadows and work in the mainstream as regular citizens. If you ban cultivation, it will just revert to the underground. These are local citizens who are asking to be regulated and taxed. The good, honest folks, the adult children of your neighbors and mine, deserve to be recognized and welcomed back into our community. Banning cultivation will only drive the law-abiding people out of here, and we will be stuck with the bad apples. In all the years I've been here, marijuana has too. It will never go away. I think you all realize this, regardless of how you feel about it. So please legitimize these folks in our economy with reasonable guidelines. If you take the time to talk with local business owners, you will find that most of them support some kind of conditions or regulations. As many businesses are benefiting from the dollars, these folks return to the local economy. With no clear and reasonable regulations, we are wasting the resources of law enforcement and making criminals out of patients and their providers. We have many problems in this county that deserve the attention of law enforcement. Marijuana is not one of them. As a long-term resident, tax-paying property owner, and active community member, I'm asking you all to do the right thing. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you all for listening and to the voice of the people. And
We're going to have the...
let's see, might have to... How's that? Is that better? Thank you again for listening to the voice of the people. It means a lot to us, people of this county. My name is Jens Jarvie, and I was born and raised here in this county, and have lived here for many years, 36. I've come here today to speak about a few things that strike a chord of passion within my heart and being. The first is ecology, land management, and environmental stewardship. And the second is in creating a foundation for the inevitable cannabis industry that provides opportunity for the people of Calaveras County to thrive and lead the way in modeling a design for our surrounding states and communities. When I look around and see the potential that exists within this industry, I'm truly overwhelmed. The amount of jobs it has the potential to create are unlimited. The people in the trades and services that have already seen and experienced a huge boom in demand for their services is undeniable. The businesses that have thrived from cannabis influence are numerous. The people on the front lines, we are not criminals. We are farmers, entrepreneurs, self-motivated, intelligent human beings with the same interests as any working-class American, to provide a good life for our families and loved ones. I speak out today for a pro-cannabis industry that has regulation and control for the benefit of this land and its people. I speak out for my desire to eliminate any and all potential for crime and violence related to cannabis. We as farmers want to know that we are safe from thieves and people who have no respect for our personal property and human life. I'm 36 years old, a father of 2 kids, a landowner and tax-paying citizen. My experience with cannabis is not just growing a plant. Every day I step into a classroom that offers courses in biology, botany, ecology, environmental impact, and sustainable land stewardship. For many years, I've carried a vision to create a model that incorporates a multitude of practices from permaculture, organic gardening, ecological design, and education for sustainable land management, stewardship, and bioremediation. My vision is not just about cannabis, but about a complete system that offers all the potential to thrive and grow. Cannabis is a significant part of this model, not only for its economic value, but for its profound healing ray of properties. I have a vision of Calaveras County, that Calaveras can become one of the most ideal places in the entire world for cultivating some of the highest quality cannabis. I believe that we are poised perfectly to make Calaveras County a prime destination for people to visit from around the world who have the desire to sample and experience some of the finest sun-grown, organic, and sustainably farmed medicine. People will be able to tour from farm to farm and see the love and care our growers have put forth to improve the land and bring greater value to the pristine beauty of these hills. So please consider all of this when you make your decision. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today in this democratic process, talking about how to honor everybody's needs in a time of transition. My background is as a biologist and ecologist. I do consulting work helping people understand how they can best honor their land in the process of developing agricultural and homestead systems and managing for habitat and wildland. And I'm also an educator in environmental science and holistic medicine. I know this territory most deeply from these last 2 years, where I've been invited by family to help develop a beautiful educational farm here. And my work as a consultant continues, so I've been traveling all over the state of California, witnessing the development of the medical cannabis industry and the agricultural and political and all the aspects. And it's struck me everywhere how easy it is not to appreciate how the economics of cannabis in our communities right now, as much as it's not managed as cleanly as it can be and it has a lot of side effects that we're reining in, it affects more people than we really realize. So many different stores, and I work with nurseries in particular. That one's obvious. Nurseries are so amazingly bloomed and supported by that. But it's struck me as something that's really easy to take for granted, that a choice to ban and a choice to restrict to a really small amount are going to affect a lot of people. And just remember that we don't know how deep that economic impact is going to be. As I've gotten to know Mountain Ranch, and it's really been the agricultural community here because the farmers bond together, there's a beautiful agricultural community here. Beautiful, sweet, good, hardworking people. And working in the agricultural industry, it's hard to make enough money in organic agriculture or any kind of agriculture to afford your own land or home for your family. This is an amazing opportunity for Calaveras County to say, how are we going to hold all of the needs of our community, all the major considerations that need due process to understand safety, economics, regulation, responsibility, but to actually invite a culture of family farming with this is a huge opportunity. So absolutely in support of an ordinance that is a good next step and how we can hold this responsibly and contribute to a culture of responsibility. And we send our respect and our support to you in the process of bringing all this information together. And
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Blessings.
Hello, Dustin Peterson, San Andreas. A lot of what I have to say here today, I feel almost silly saying it. I feel like this stuff was said 60 years ago, and that anybody who paid attention in history class, I shouldn't really have to repeat a lot of this.
Speak more into the mic.
But I'm going to anyway. Most of the problems I hear from those in opposition to the cannabis industry are the direct result of the black market. These complaints often include crimes, social costs, environmental damage, and danger to children and youths. The slow progression into fair regulation of this very real industry that is already here is to continue to put our children and youths at risk from the ills of the black market. To hobble this legal industry is to continue to play into the hands of the cartels who exploit our public lands and pollute our water. If a representative of the drug cartels were here today, they would be pushing for a total ban, because that's the most effective way to keep the prices high and them in business. When legal cannabis successfully displaces the black market, it will make access for minors more difficult, not less. Cigarettes and alcohol are both proven to be more difficult to obtain for minors than cannabis because they're regulated. By creating a fair ordinance that encourages people to become legitimate, we can take cannabis off the street and put it into legal businesses. We can mitigate the social costs by offering our burned out citizens a chance to become legal businessmen and job creators instead of pushing them out or driving them back into the shadows. I don't see any reason why a business would be pushed out when there are so many empty buildings in this county. It would actually be nice to fill a few of them. Although certainly we will have a few, our population and zoning is not sufficient to support a large number of dispensaries. The few that we will have will hardly be enough to significantly change the Highway 4 corridor, as I've heard mentioned. Dispensaries are clean, respectable, and discreet businesses. Often people don't even realize they're there unless they go there as a customer. There's a multitude of jobs this industry employs, and although there are more and more farmers beginning to feel safe enough to pay taxes and issue W-2s to their employees, much of this money is still currently under the table because farmers cannot come out of the shadows without risking their livelihoods. I ask for us not to come from a place of fear or personal opinion from someone who says something like, I once heard from a friend that marijuana is bad, okay, and my friend is a teacher or my friend is a police officer. These are simply third-party opinions. I've heard a lot of them today, a lot of anecdotal evidence. There's a lot of real facts and statistics to base this discussion on, so I ask for us to remain civilized. I ask for the board to hear this argument for its logic and rationality, not its emotional charge. I'd like to leave you with a quote from Milton Friedman. A major source of objection to a free economy is that it gives people what they want instead of what a particular group thinks they want. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tara Glessman. I was the founder of Harmony Ranch, one of our local nonprofits, and I was asked to come and speak on behalf of nonprofits because it's a really fine line of being able to accept money from this industry, but our program is comfortable talking about it. So a couple years ago, we were about to go under. It was our second year in, and we got a hold of CPR. They heard that we needed some funding, which is now CCA. I'd let them know that $500 would help us pull a couple kids through, and they came through with about $3,000 and continued helping. Our little tiny program could not have survived, and we serviced over 100 children a year. If you look across nonprofits, there are huge donations that are anonymous, and it's because of all of these fine people. This is a community-minded, area. Everybody looks out for the well-being of our children. And there were some things that were said earlier that really weighed on my heart that were not particularly, in my opinion, true. One thing is, a lot of these folks did take the day off work, including myself, because this is a very important issue. And another thing that kind of saddens me is there's a lot of really well-educated individuals coming up that could have opened the doors for some individuals that were sitting on that side that had a not so positive viewpoint of what's going on. And it really kind of makes me sad that we sat here, we were quiet, we listened to what the DA and the sheriffs had to say, and all I see is empty seats over there. So, thank you.
Wow, tough act to follow there. Good afternoon, my name's Edwin Brolio, and I wanted to talk to you about the cultivation of cannabis. I want to tell you the reasons why I personally believe cultivating marijuana can be a good thing for our county. I specifically want to talk about the benefits and some of the rules and regulations and guidelines. First off, I'd like to address the benefits of hydroponic grows in your community, which everybody has covered, and I'm going to state on a little bit is the economics base of it. Cannabis is a cash crop. Being able to cultivate in Calaveras County would generate a lot of money for our community, county, and state. By allowing cultivation of marijuana, it would mean having to build your grow and pay employees and government officials to regulate your garden, and which directly brings cash flow to local grocery markets, hardware stores, contractors, etc. Cannabis grown hydroponically produces some of the highest quality cannabis, which is best for medicinal use and yields the highest price. When you grow hydroponically, a person can grow year-round, which would be a steady cash flow for the community, providing jobs to maintain your grow at a year-round basis. One of the big concerns that I've heard a lot of these people talk about is the security and protection of our community. Some people are concerned about the increase in crime in their neighborhood and community. By allowing a hydroponic grow either in commercial or rural area, it gives you the complete protection over your crop, being that it is in an enclosed area and that your crop is managed underneath the lock and key. Keeps minors out, keeps thieves, preventing thievery, and reduce the risk of crime. The other big thing that I hear people concerned about is the smell and appearance. Out of sight, out of mind. Being that it's an enclosed area, the visual aspect that some people are worried about is taken out of play by growing indoors. By growing hydroponically indoor, you also eliminate the smell factor that is a concern. When growing indoors, you have to bring in air and also have to take air out. By doing so, you're using a carbon filter, which reduces the smell of marijuana almost entirely. The other thing is water conservation. By growing hydroponically, you conserve water because you're reusing that water to feed your plants multiple times a day over a span of at least a week. Then you can take that water and recycle it by breaking down the nutrients by different methods, making a clean, viable water, which is also touches base on environmental and watershed concern. Some ways of cleaning the water is that you construct a wetland of remediation of hydroponic wastewater. There's also machinery that you can use that uses an electrical current that breaks down your nutrient base and also by pH balance and everything else. If the board should choose to allow the cultivation of cannabis and chooses that it's in the best interest of Calaveras County, I would like to discuss the possibility of allowing hydroponics grown in certain commercial and rural areas. I think by allowing this, it would eliminate the worry of people who rent and own shops in the community being forced out of their establishments. Because it is important to keep a good relationship with the business owners and property owners, I think this could be a good way to find a common ground. In closing, I'd like to say that I was born and raised here in Calaveras County, and part of the reason why I choose to live in Calaveras County opposed to Washington or Oregon was being able to come home to my hometown to cultivate and add certain benefits to my family, friends, and to my community. I hope that all of you take in every person's personal perspective of the opposing and for the people who are pro and make the best decision for the community opposed to what is on individual concerns. Thank you.
Hello, Amy Toussaint, Railroad Flat. Thank you so much for your time. I work as a trauma researcher for a Level 1 trauma center. We collect, maintain, and report specific data to the National Trauma Registry, which supports improvement in patient outcomes by monitoring trauma system trends, supplying benchmark data, and identifying injury trends. Data and statistics are my purview, so I'll try not to fill your heads with too many numbers. But here are a few items that reflect the results of what I do. In 2005, the Journal of Trauma and Acute Care Surgery published an analysis of injury associations among hospitalized trauma patients. They concluded that patients with alcohol toxicology were more likely to have violence-related injuries, with drugs like cocaine having an additive effect. Opiates were associated with nonviolent injuries and burns, while marijuana use was not associated with either violent or nonviolent injuries. In 2009, BMC Public Health published findings that acute alcohol use increases the risk of injury threefold, while cannabis use was inversely related to the risk of injury. The National Trauma Data Bank publishes a list of comorbid conditions for hospitals, trauma centers to track. These are things that may complicate or exacerbate a traumatic injury. This year, they have requested that hospitals remove marijuana use from the list of drugs whose use qualifies as a comorbid condition. This means that they consider a patient with a history of hypertension to have a greater risk of complications than a patient who uses cannabis. This information indicates marijuana is not associated with traumatic injuries, nor does it contribute to worsening outcomes in patients with traumatic injuries. It's often mentioned, this is on a personal note, it's often mentioned that many people do not show up to speak out at these events. The cannabis community experiences this effect as well. We decided to try and show you how many cannabis supporters exist behind the front lines in this county, people who are also afraid to come here and be judged. In that regard, I appreciate the dedication and courage that everyone here has shown today. This past Saturday, CCA made a call to supporters countywide to send emails to you to show you their support for regulated commercial cannabis. I'm told that the inbox of the board clerk received 250 emails from our community in less than 48 hours. The growers and other members of the cannabis industry here in Calaveras County are unlike any group of people that I have had the pleasure to know and to work with. They want to be compliant. The level of responsibility, commitment to good farming practices, and investment in community enrichment is remarkable and something to be treasured and cultivated. No pun intended. I hope the board will make thoughtful recommendations that support this industry as well as a safe community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Niall Plouffe. I'm from Railroad Flat.
Please talk into the mic, okay?
My name is Niall Plouffe. I am from Railroad Flat. I would like to touch on 2 points that were addressed, one by County Council and one by the DA. I am currently a quality assurance manager for the West Coast division of a major construction company. My department is tasked with enforcing the building and construction codes for projects that are typically in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I have been in code enforcement for 20 years and have worked all over this country, and in all that time, I've never had to enforce private sector codes that were deemed a misdemeanor with 6 months imprisonment. There have been plenty of projects where that code could have been used and possibly abused simply because an inspector had a problem with the contractor. I would like to ask that you reconsider section 17.91.120, paragraph G, in regards to the enforcement of this chapter. As I stated, I've enforced codes in the private sector from the municipal level to the federal level for 20 years, and I have not seen a code that incorporates a criminal penalty for code violations of this nature, specifically referencing the height of a fence. I don't believe that law enforcement should be used to enforce codes that are standard business practices, which this ordinance shall become for most of us when we write our own procedures. The idea behind regulation of this industry is to change criminal enforcement to code enforcement. Business owners in every industry, from heavy construction to store owners, are allowed the opportunity to remedy a code violation without the threat of a criminal record. Adding a criminal record to a business owner for code violation is not code enforcement at all. Code enforcement is done with citations, fines, and ultimately the penalty of license forfeiture. The people who are here actively seeking licenses are not the lawbreakers. People who jump through these kinds of hoops to become licensed businesses are all in. We have a vested interest in staying in business, and in fact, the entire future of farming depends on it. So I urge you to reconsider the inclusion of criminal penalties for code compliance issues whose penalties should be in line with standard business practices. In other words, tiered fines, not criminal records, just like any other business. I personally do not have a criminal record, and I am not interested in getting one because I don't have the proper fence height or any other civil penalty that should be imposed on me. Have a great day, and thank you for your time.
I'm short, so I'll have to lower this. My name's Jason Giddy Up Emo. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I've had the pleasure of speaking at events like this for the past 2 years quite frequently. A little bit of insight as to who I am. I have worked on regulations in Colorado, Washington, Nevada, and recently last year in Jamaica on their decriminalization laws that passed. I came out here at the bequest of people in your community that know what I know about BHO extraction and general extraction coding and legitimacy that we've done in these other 3 states. All I really want to ask is to not see an implicit ban on butane until you have had the chance to see how we do it in these legitimate markets. Because I think your goals are similar for what our goals were in Denver and in Washington, Nevada, which was to stop the houses from blowing up, which was to stop it to be used as jet fuel for criminal organizations because the margins are so well. I've brought with me, and then through your clerk, we'll have forwarded to you some of the regulations that we have set forth and that are abided by now in Colorado to make sure that you don't have the same problems. What we've seen in places that have done outright bans has pushed the production of BHO back indoors. For a little insight, what comes out of BHO is worth more than gold on the black market. It literally sells between $50 and $60 a gram in places where it's not allowed. In places like Colorado, where we've regulated, had some strict coding enforcement, the price of that product has dropped to half, $25 to $30 a gram. And what we've seen is basically everybody from the black market almost giving up on risking the felony charges for production outside of a license, which is easily enforceable now in our communities because we have given businesses the safe pathway to make said product. It's not worth it to them anymore. And our black market in Colorado has seen a drastic reduction in its ability to flourish just because of how we do production. I haven't had much time in your community, but what I've seen in talking to everybody here today is very reminiscent of where we were at years ago. And a large section of our community was marginalized and made to feel like criminals for doing something that didn't hurt anybody. Crime is going to come. Crime is always going to be there. You're always going to have ER trips, whether you set up an ordinance to regulate this or not. The good thing about setting up an ordinance with common sense legislation that you should reach out to other states on is that you get it right the first time. You can enforce these regulations, you can get the bad element out, and you can make everybody toe the line. I hope the information I send to you provides useful, and I'll be available for any questions at any given time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Kauchek. I've lived in Calaveras County for 30 years. I just want to go on record as saying I'm pro medicinal marijuana industry. I spent the last year reading everything I could. On this subject, and education is really important into separating the facts from the fiction. The fact is, the majority of the farmers in this room are all good, hard-working, caring individuals. They contribute to this county's economy, and their cannabis goes to dispensaries, not street corners. I believe with careful regulation, this industry will continue to provide better than low-income jobs and continue to put money into the pockets of the local citizens. If you regulate it, you control where it grows, where it goes, and how it gets there. If you ban it, it goes back to hide and seek in a state that's moving towards legalization. I hope you vote for regulation of this industry rather than a ban. Thanks.
Okay, so watch your place in line. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Some of us older folks have smaller bladders. Okay. Oh, I don't need to. They already got the word. See? All right, so I would like to remind everybody, if possible, to not. We've heard quite a bit of stories today. They're pretty repetitive, some of them. So we want to hear from everybody. Everybody has a legal right to have a public comment. Sure would like to get to the meat of it eventually. So if you can consider that, that would be really great. And I'd like to continue with public comment until we're finished with that, and then we can move on to the deliberation. Thank you.
Okay, well, hello, my name is Holly Johnston. I'm from Murphy's. Marijuana cultivation has been a blessing to my life and to the lives of hundreds of families in this county. It's helped young people go to college. It's helped family homes avoid foreclosure during the Great Recession. It was a huge help to my father, who when I was 9 suffered an accident leaving him paralyzed and in pain. Cannabis was the only medicine that allowed him to escape his pain and be himself. Opiates, Vicodin or Valium, would take him away from us. Even aspirin sent him to the hospital with an ulcer. Despite my exposure to this Schedule I drug from the age of 11, I graduated top 10 in my class at Bret Harte and graduated college with a 3.4 GPA. The economic benefit of cannabis is enormous. Businesses such as Little Trees and Arnold create jobs and revenue for the community. Growers and distributors frequent local shops supporting local businesses and restaurants. Without cannabis, the recession would have hit the people of this county and state far harder. In order for cannabis to continue to be a healthy boon to our communities, there are many considerations we must take into account. A fear that I have, and I'm sure it's shared, is that in the legalization and regulation of cannabis, the costs of regulation to farmers will be such that a farmer cannot make a living without growing hundreds of plants. It's in all of our interests to balance regulations and allow farmers to still be able to make a living off of smaller farms. As far as enforcement goes, the legalization of marijuana will make it far easier to decipher growers who are a functional part of the community from the cartels. Quite frankly, if cannabis is made illegal in this county again, most growers will probably continue to grow, accustomed as they are to living outside the law to make their living. It will be more dangerous for them and more confusing for law enforcement. It will also be short-lived as statewide legalization is on its way. Cannabis cultivation and distribution in this county is and has been going on for many years. It's a boon to our economy locally and has kept families from losing their homes. I hope the board will keep this in mind as they make their decision. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a business owner here and a resident of Calaveras County for 43 years. And as I came through this morning, I was a little disappointed. Kind of took me back in time as law enforcement DA stood up with the prototype PowerPoint presentation of the Walmart distribution center. I kind of felt like Columbus days where the world is not square. I don't think it's square. Things have changed. A kid with an 8th grade graduation can now get online or come home and see the benefits of cannabis. Beyond that, you just mentioned the meat of the matter. That, I think, just derives straight to the point is the meat of the matter is here. It is here. It's in every one of these people that stand here. It's like I've seen this community come together in ways that just sets such an example for so many other communities. Like, we're here in the West. We are the gold rush. We are, here it is. And it's not so much that it's all about the economic growth, but it's about the unity of the community from what's happening right now. I think we have a long ways to go, but I think what you have here, with the unity you have here, the energy and the strength that is behind these people, you can go a long way. Here you are, representatives of this community in each district. I see nothing but good things if you just adhere to that energy. I mean, some of the benefits that are coming through can be an example. You know, let's set an example for what's to come. We right now we have the opportunity to set an example for a lot of other communities that are going to follow suit with, and the states even be probably looking at a little bit of direction in some of the ways they need to go. We have a unique climate, and we have the opportunity to rise up and really adhere to all of the unity that's here in our community, in our county. And so I just want to encourage, as we're all willing and able to work together for an ordinance that's going to work for the community and keep everybody with profits and together rather than division. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't go up, so I'll go down. My name is Bill Hand, and I'm a retired mortgage broker, 20 years. Come from the Bay Area. I had 2 places to either retire to, the mountains or Hawaii. Well, Hawaii is kind of expensive, and I can't really own the land. I'm not Hawaiian, so I chose the mountains. Didn't plan on going into another industry because I was 20 years as a mortgage broker, and that's what I want to kind of touch base on. I am a retired mortgage broker, understand the finance industry. When you're hearing from a True Value hardware store, and that's just one industry leader that is talking about if this does not go through as a positive ordinance, and the state has gone ahead with the different laws that have been set in place, you get to pick and choose which you would like to do, okay? And I recommend that you do it in a fashion to where it benefits a lot of people in this county on both sides. You can make it to where people who have lived here a while can enjoy this beautiful county, and people who want to cultivate responsibly and take care of their own land, like we have a land that we're not going to pollute, we're not going to destroy the water, we're not going to do any of that. We're responsible, caring, loving people, okay? But if you take this industry away, not only are you going to take away the income tax, the property tax, the sales tax, the business tax, the licensing fee that you can get from us to set up your committees and your agencies that can do the responsible ordinance checks, and just think about the tax income. This is the meat and potatoes. You are set forth with the laws of California that have been signed by Governor Brown. What is it, 243, 234, and 266? They're right in front of you. You guys get to pick and choose. Do it responsibly. Do it fairly for everybody. You have the right, but do not do a 2-patient, 12-plant limit. That's not responsible. You're going to let the cartels prosper again. The only way to get them out of our county is if you put responsible ordinances together to make them stick out like a sore thumb. They are not responsible to our land. We are. Thank you very much.
Mark Bolger, Mountain Ranch. While I agree with almost everything that Agricultural Commissioner Kevin Wright said, I do have one thing I'd like to point out. On the lunch break, I checked out the zoning code, Chapter 17, Section 22020. For rural residential, permitted uses under Section A, number 1, is agricultural operations. I personally believe that my cannabis farm, as well as the rest of the people in this room, that these are legitimate agricultural operations and should be treated as such. Beyond that, I'd like to dig into the meat of the ordinance. I think it was very well crafted in the short amount of time. Almost everything in there I think is spot on, and we should adopt this ordinance. At the last meeting, Planning Director Marr had mentioned how a CUP might not be the most appropriate way to go about permitting these farms. I think zoning clearance certificate was what was suggested after the initial suggestion. I completely agree with him on that. I also, it was very interesting last Tuesday seeing the asphalt plant hearing and seeing how a conditional use permit was applied to another business in this county. And I think there's a lot of overlap with what our industry has. There's quite a bit of environmental oversight under this new legislative package. I know I've talked about the Water Quality Control Board, Fish and Game, Department of Food and Agriculture, just to name a few. So there will be quite a bit of environmental oversight. I think a conditional use permit would be redundant and it would overlap with a lot of things that are already going to be expected of this industry. A lot of this environmental oversight is self-imposed. Best management practices on erosion control, irrigation are prime examples that are used in this industry. In a drought such as we are in, wise farmers find ways to conserve their water supplies as much as possible by using soil mixtures that help retain water, drip irrigation, mulching. We've been able to significantly reduce the amount of water consumption on our farms. A technology brought to my attention recently are digital water content sensors that allow the farmer to use actual soil saturation data to determine when to irrigate through an automated system, ensuring irrigation is only carried out when it's necessary. We all know unnecessary irrigation is not only poor farming practice, but it's also not a sustainable business model. Another point I'd like to bring up is we've heard about the economic benefit of this industry and how large it is for the county. I think it has to be said that this industry has and will continue to help local businesses thrive. It's a symbiotic relationship that both sides prosper from. My farming operations rely on such professionals as mechanics, electricians, building contractors, equipment operators, well drillers, fencing contractors, etc. I also rely on lumber yards, hardware and grocery stores, restaurants, welding shops. When our industry prospers, so do the businesses around us, and we can't succeed without them. Lastly, I'd like to say I think I speak for every farmer in this meeting today that has taken the time to be a part of this process when I say we're proud Calaveras residents, we're members of our tight-knit communities, and we want Calaveras to remain a place where not only our industry thrives, but our families and neighbors do as well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, county staff, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Matt Clark. I'm a local attorney. I live in Hathaway Pines, and I have offices in Angels Camp. I think about the future. Within 1 to 5 years, places like Mark Twain, UCSF, the Mayo Clinic, and Johns Hopkins are going to be looking to fill multi-million-dollar orders for marijuana-based medicines. Who will get these contracts? Will it be Pfizer or Merck filling these orders from billion-dollar facilities owned by very few people, most of whom live out of state? I sincerely hope not. Will it be Oakland, Sacramento, Yolo, or Humboldt? That would be better, but I'd like to see that contract filled by these independent contractors of Calaveras County. This county can be capable of filling those multi-million-dollar orders. They're organizing into cooperative coalitions capable of competing with the massive corporations that are coming and will fight them. A cooperative can fight back, just like Blue Diamond, Tillamook Cheese, Ace Hardware, Ocean Spray, and Sunkissed Oranges are able to fight their corporate competitors and provide prosperity for their small business members. If Calaveras hopes to succeed in this industry, we need support today. The forces against these people are statewide. They are national. They are international. They are greedy, and they care nothing about Calaveras, its land, and its people. We have the opportunity to be first to this trough. We have the opportunity to secure the dispensary contracts we need to ensure non-diversion, to organize into legal businesses, to streamline our operations, to handle our tax payments and establish our legal workforce. We need to accept the state of California's offer to legalize our industry so that we can be at the forefront of providing organic, lovingly grown, safe medicine that can outcompete corporate interests over and over again. I have some time left, perhaps? Let's talk about taxes. Permit fees in Sacramento for a dispensary to cover costs are $12,600 a year. The 4% business operations tax in Sacramento, which they recently upped to 5% on the 9th to handle a children's fund, brought in $2.86 million for the 14-15 fiscal year. That's $103,000 on average per dispensary. The estimates in their new cultivation ordinance estimate that they will receive $1 million a year from their new up to 22,000 square foot facilities. There's some numbers. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention to these matters.
Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Hodge. I've spoken before you twice before today. I'm a 23-year attorney. I've spent 10 years in this field of medical marijuana. I come from a law enforcement background in that my father was law enforcement for 30 years, police department. And I've seen a lot of the things that are on both sides of the issue. I'm aware of some of the issues that were pointed out this morning by what has been termed the opposition, or people that are against marijuana cultivation. And I want to respond to a couple of those points directly, rather than telling additional stories today. The first comment that I heard, and this was something that was raised by two of the board members at the end of the last meeting, was an issue where some landowners or landlords are attempting to evict wrongfully tenants who apparently are in properties and trying to displace them and to put other businesses in there that may be related to cannabis. I'd like to suggest that, first of all, that's a horrible situation that would be happening, but it's also protected by California law. If you have a valid lease, you can't just be evicted. You can't just raise someone's rent in violation of the lease. And I would suggest that there is someone who's being evicted like that. They can talk to me, they could talk to Mr. Clark, or any number of pro bono available legal clinics that would help them in that situation. And I don't mean this as just a simple solution, but this is a real thing. We can't be motivated by fear or hyperbole or things, the boogeyman that may come out. There are instances in all public policy decisions of abuses and scenarios that need to be attended to and covered. And that's what this board is doing right now. And I want to encourage you to stay on track with what you've been doing. The ordinance that has been developed is well thought out. There were a couple of points that I presented last time. I saw that one of those corrections was made. I don't know if it was because of my comment. I also made the point last time, and I'll reiterate it this time. In the subpoint 2 in the ordinance, where it talks about how you have to get a state license before you can have a county license in effect. That's backwards. I mentioned that previously. There should be something put in there so that when a state license is available, it must be obtained. But the state licenses won't come out until 2018. That wasn't captured in the edits that I saw. The other comment I'll make is I heard some hyperbole and negative talk today. Surprisingly, again, I come from a background of sympathetic and a supporter of law enforcement, and I heard some remarks today that were actually a little offensive to me as an attorney. That there were names that were Hispanic-oriented names or Asian-oriented names that were found on patient-doctor recommendations at a grow in the county, and the implication that there are, quote, undesirables in the medical marijuana community. This should be rejected. It wasn't part of the discussion. It was not supposed to be part of the discussion today. And I'd ask that we stay on point. Please just stay on point with where we've been and stay on track. Thank you for your time and patience in listening to all this.
Good afternoon. Jed Richardson, Mountain Ranch. The county should be applauded for developing a draft ordinance which provides the necessary framework to accomplish the goals of regulation. Regulation which is supported by Governor Brown and his administration, and regulation which is necessary to legitimize the industry. And it's vitally important that a draft ordinance be brought to a final form in an expeditious manner so that cannabis farmers can make plans for the coming season in their efforts to be in full compliance. Having said that, there still needs to be some grace period for compliance, and particularly for those affected by the fire. As the owner of Cave City Vineyards, where I farm wine grapes and organic vegetables, I can tell you that cannabis growers I know employ organic and sustainable practices whenever possible, and are truly interested in being good stewards of the land which sustains them. And they are mandated to do so under Water Quality Control Board regulations, which along with the State Department of Agriculture provides the necessary oversight. They employ water conservation measures such as drip irrigation and use no more water on a farm-wide basis than any other agricultural commodity, and usually much less. As a real estate agent with Mountain Ranch Realty, I can tell you that real estate values for properties properly zoned for agriculture have increased by nearly 100% in the past few years, even despite the damage caused by the fire. The demand for homes and land currently outpaces availability, and it's definitely a seller's market. The only properties not increasing in value are those regulated by homeowners associations, which do not allow agriculture, despite the fact that the land is zoned for that use. The County Agriculture Department is the right agency to administer the ordinance locally. It has staff familiar with agricultural practices and will be issuing the pesticide permits and scale certifications anyway. The Agriculture Department is in need of additional staff, and this ordinance provides the means to hire them. I would like to say, too, that the RR designation, rural residential, should stay in the list up there, as my vineyard is also zoned rural residential and is obviously a commercial operation. Cannabis cultivation in this county is here to stay. We need to regulate and legitimize the industry and treat it like any other form of agriculture, subject to the same oversight of state and county agencies as farmers like myself. Thank you.
Reed Larson, Mountain Ranch. First, real quick, I'd like to address the concern with medical cannabis tracking. Fiona Ma of the Board of Equalization just met February 10th with software developers concerning how the system is going to work. Discussion included traceability of cannabis transactions and included the Board of Equalization's track and trace responsibilities being proposed under AB 266, Chapter 689. So some moves are being made at the state level concerning that system. All the concerns from the district attorney and sheriff could be addressed by a well-regulated cannabis industry. Colorado has shown us the youth consumption of marijuana has not increased, cartel participation is at an all-time low, traffic fatalities are down, and regulated markets have provided tax revenue to support government programs. Have there been some participants in Calaveras not been playing by the rules? Sure. However, these problems again can be solved by creating a well-regulated system. We suggest creating a priority licensing system that weeds out bad actors, strong enforcement, and creating a proper tax structure to pay for these programs, perhaps as a square footage tax, as suggested by the Ag Commissioner. These concepts, coupled with a strong regulatory scheme, can tackle these issues. A London School of Economics report found if states pursue prohibitionist policies in the absence of development and political integration, the result is usually instability, violence, and failures on drug control goals. The district attorney asked what Calaveras can afford. I'll tell you what we can't afford. Calaveras cannot afford to reconstruct after the Butte fire without cannabis cultivation. Calaveras cannot support or afford to cede control of cultivation to illegal cartel grows like the Jamaican Nationals the sheriff spoke of. Calaveras cannot afford to remove its largest industry and respected community members. Please support this ordinance. Thank you.
My name is Karen Hosa, and I'm a voting resident and small business owner in the West Point area of Calaveras County, who is in favor of the regulated farming of medical marijuana. I'd like to thank you all for the numerous hours that you've devoted to this extremely important public safety, environmental, and economic issue. My business, Calaveras Homegrown, in addition to growing medical cannabis, grows organic vegetable starch for the local residents in the West Point and Wilseyville area. We work with the local hardware store to sell our vegetable starch throughout early spring and summer. In addition, we donate vegetable and herb starch to the local elementary school, where we also volunteer our time. In the last 3 years, we've seen an influx of money into the county from local cannabis growers, and that includes us. We've been able to work with our local hardware store in West Point to advise them on what to carry, what growers want to purchase, so that we can keep our money in the county and in our area. We are personally willing to spend our dollars here in Calaveras County rather than travel out of the area where prices for supplies might be less. Our business firmly believes in supporting local business. We at Calaveras Homegrown are responsible, upstanding citizens in our community, and we believe that the majority of our neighbors and friends who also grow cannabis feel the same. The best way for responsible citizens to replace those more negative elements of the industry is through regulation and education. My business partners and I bring many years of experience to the community in the form of organic farming, land planning, environmental awareness, biology, and forestry, to name a few. Whether growing organic vegetables or cannabis, we use environmentally friendly techniques, including drip irrigation to conserve water, organic compost teas for fertilization, and beneficial insects for prevention of pests in the garden. We believe in low impact in the environment with our gardening techniques and stress that wherever we're working. We at Calaveras Homegrown are committed to the economic and environmental health of Calaveras County. You have our pledge as committed cannabis growers to apply for a county permit once they're available. I want to thank this Board of Supervisors for your courage to craft the ordinance that will provide a win-win environment for all of us whose lives are touched by cannabis, which is almost everyone in the state of California. And thank you for giving our community this opportunity to be heard. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Maitrot, and I own property in Calaveras County since 2001. I've always loved this area and was thrilled to be able to purchase some lovely acreage for retirement purposes in Mountain Ranch. The development of our parcel was a 9-year journey, and as luck would have it, I was able to transition to a full-time remote teleworker and move to Calaveras County earlier than planned. Since buying the property, I've seen Calaveras go through socio and economic changes. Some were to my liking, some were not. 'Tis life, as they say. Marijuana represents an economic and socio change for this county, and how it is implemented will affect the current and future generations. The ordinance proposal before the Board of Supervisors and ultimately the Calaveras County Planning Commission has my support. Sure, I'd prefer not to live in an area known as Cannabis County, but I accept the industry is here and appreciate the thoughtful approach being taken towards regulation. There are only 3 areas that I feel are being overlooked in the current draft ordinance, and those are odor mitigation, water resources, and ordinance enforcement. As stated, the development of my dream home was a 9-year journey. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into our homestead. Now there are several months out of the year that I am unable to enjoy my property due to the powerful skunky smell of several nearby grows. At harvest time is the best time of the year in the mother lode, and I often have to stay inside with my windows and doors shut. How will this be managed? And I hope we give some thought to that. We have the ability to measure noise complaints with noise meters, but how is smell measured? What is obnoxious to one may not be offensive to another individual. But having survived Butte, do I now look forward to staring at a property that looks dramatically different and at times is completely unenjoyable due to the powerful odor marijuana plants emit, which, unpleasant as it might be for some, turns my stomach. Water is a precious commodity. Wells are running dry as a result of the prolonged drought. Crops need water, and there is limited supply. Some use the right to farm as the rationale, but this law was actually developed in response to suburban encroachment upon agricultural land. I hope that we take some thought and put some consideration into how that is considered. Finally, do we have the law enforcement to enforce whatever ordinance we put into place. If not, then the ordinance is not worth the paper it's written and printed upon. To reiterate, I appreciate the thoughtful approach being taken towards regulation. All involved have engaged with an open mind and the best for Calaveras County at heart. I would simply ask that further thought be put towards odor mitigation, our water resources, and our capacity to enforce what we put into place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Torgerson. I'm a resident of West Point, and I'm here as three people today. I'm a resident. I publish a local newspaper, the West Point News and Upcountry News, and I'm also a real estate agent. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I haven't heard much from the real estate community today. I'm a realtor, which is different than a real estate agent. I'm a member of CAR, California Association of Realtors, National Association of Realtors. We have to follow a very strict code of ethics. So it's been challenging the last year or so with a lot of buyers coming in. They say, what can we do? What are the rules? And I don't know. Call the county, kind of. So that's one thing that could be very helpful is if you have something on your website or if you give something to realtors or real estate agents to be able to educate people that are coming in to buy. Because some people come in and they just think it's a free-for-all up here. They think it's wild and open. They can cut down all their trees. They can live in a trailer. They can dig a pit for their toilet. We just don't know. So please help us with that. It is now a seller's market in District 2. We have more buyers than we do properties. When properties come on the market, they're selling. It's common for them to sell over asking price. We have multiple offers. People are buying rundown properties and fixing them up. Currently in District 2, there are 18 residential properties on the market. The whole county is 274. I pulled those numbers this morning. I have a list of people who are looking for property, and as properties come up, we're getting offers. I field dozens of calls a week from growers from outside the area who want to come in and buy property. As a realtor, I cannot discriminate. So, I can't tell somebody to go talk to, I could tell somebody to go talk to somebody else, but I help everybody as much as I can. So again, every day I'm talking to people who don't know what the rules are. I also wanted to say recommendations. I'll be happy to spend time with any one of you or all of you to talk more about the real estate market and how this is affecting it. My recommendation is regulate, make it very clear on what is allowed and what is not allowed. Growers will respect that. Adopt regulations to protect our local environment. Adopt fees to generate revenue for our county. And understand how regulation will reduce black market marijuana sales in California. And please publish these regulations so that people can easily access them. And also plan for legalization because everybody thinks it's coming. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you everybody for being here. My name is Bert Schufelt. I'm a District 3 voter. I am here also to speak on behalf of 23 other people that couldn't be here because they're at schools, jobs, and et cetera. And I don't appreciate the sheriff's implication that the people that are here because they don't have jobs. It's not true. A lot of people are losing wages to be here. Before lunch, we had a lot of fear and anxiety being expressed. And I think that might have had to do with blood sugar, but I'm not positive. But I've seen a lot of positivity and a lot of good things said here this afternoon. And something in specific with the sheriff, $2 million business revenues in this county, one business bringing in $2 million of revenue, that's a really good thing. That I don't know who in their right mind could complain about that, because that's not $2 million in profit going to a drug lord who's leaving the county. Half of that's probably going to people who are here working in the county, and the majority of that getting spent in the county. So not a very good argument in my opinion. I think that personal use should be less restricted. I don't see why you have to register with the county to exercise your right to fulfill your needs. I think that CUPs are a disaster in the making. Most of that money, from my reading, goes to Fish and Game. It doesn't go to the county coffers. That makes zero sense to me, and I think that is a big mistake. We should just have fees that gets put onto commercial activities, go straight to the general fund. It makes a lot more sense to me. I don't get why we want to give most of that to Fish and Game and like $3,000 to us. because we need the money, obviously. Everybody needs the money. I have a particular sticking point with the fencing guidelines. I don't think anyone here can jump over a 72-inch fence. I know that I can't. Seems like 6 feet's reasonable. All the local merchants carry 6-foot fencing. We could probably do just fine with that, and you don't need any zoning ordinances to build a 6-foot fence, but I hear you might need them for 8-foot fences, so that seems kind of strange. And then for people complaining about the smell, when you buy property here, with your property title, I think is how it works, you receive the Calaveras County Agricultural Disclosure Statement, which says pretty much this is an agricultural county. People might have turkeys next door. Who knows? It's going to stink. So I know when I got my property, that's what it said to me, and I accepted it, and I'm not trying to relitigate that now. That's all I got.
Hello, my name's Denise. I am from Copperopolis. I'm a realtor as well, and I just came to support your regulations and ordinances for cannabis, and the reasons are medical. I know very many people in my family and friends that need it, but two, I think that from everybody here that will grow, I am not a grower, that all the taxes and everything that can come from the growers and from your ordinances will only benefit our county, and I love this county. I know that I personally know of many properties that have been bought, and they have beautiful homes on them now because the people that bought them, growers, have put their money and time into it, and they have a sense of pride for their properties. And all this in turn, because of all of that, they've employed builders, and retailers have also benefited from them as well. So I guess I didn't really have a whole lot to say other than I just really wanted to support this. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Elias Igozi. I represent several stakeholders in the ordinance, some of which are here in the county, here in the meeting. Others, most of, are not here. I got to tell you, I was prepared for a bloody battle today when I came. And after hearing everybody speak, that is not what's happening in this room. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be having a conversation framed in this tone, which is not the way that it's been happening in other counties, other states, and even federal governments that I've worked with in the past. Law enforcement spoke, DA spoke, and I was very curious to hear what they had to say, because me having done this in the past, I've dealt with most of the common arguments that have to do with this industry. Their concerns are the exact same concerns of our stakeholders. The cartels, whether you guys would choose to regulate or deal with or force out of our life, we would do the same with or without you, okay? We are forced sometimes to not be the most environmentally friendly because the competitive economy of the cartels forces us not to. In other words, you take grower A and grower B. Grower A is choosing to be compliant environmentally, sustainable ecologically, and grower B is not, because neither of them have to. Well, grower B has a competitive advantage over grower A, and that's what's happening in these counties. So you see the law enforcement having interaction with organizations and cultivators that are not necessarily the most compliant, and it's because the current state of regulation kind of deters them from being so. We want nothing more than full cooperation with law enforcement, full cooperation with the district attorney, and need I remind you guys as public officials that you work for the people in this room and not the other way around. And I think it's very clear the weight of the opposition versus the proposition. And this room is still full with 200 people, whereas the 3 or 4 who spoke at the beginning are long gone. And that's not to say that they're not doing things that are important, but we could also be doing those things, but we found it be more important to be here today from start to finish than just give our 2 cents and walk away. So I just want to commend you all with the tremendous job that you've done of hearing both sides. There's an old saying, when emotion is high, reason is low. And this issue is the most politically and emotionally charged issue that has hit our government in decades. And like I said, I just want to thank you for being so unbiased, reasonable, and logical when dealing with it. Like I said, it's not a battle, this is a war, and actually this feels like the negotiation of a peace treaty. And I think this ordinance that we've put together, that is our version of a peace treaty. I would hope that you guys would give us the opportunity to show you how compliant, responsible, and mature that we want to be as an industry. Thank you.
Hello. So I've come to a couple meetings and I've always sat in the back and been quiet. So today I decided to say my story. My name's Laura Bonet. I'm a registered nurse from Florida. I first moved to Calaveras County back in June 2015. I come here today to urge you to say yes to regulating cannabis. 14 years ago today, my brother was diagnosed with epilepsy. It took a few years to get the medications that would work for him, but he would still have 3 to 4 seizures a year. As a nurse, I researched everything possible. I came across a little girl called Charlotte. She as well suffered from seizures and lived in a state where it was not legal. Her parents moved to Colorado and quickly found a farmer that helped them with some cannabis oil for their daughter. She was having over 50 seizures a day, which is 1 seizure every 30 minutes. As of today, Charlotte is nearly seizure-free. I encourage you, if you have never read her story, to Google it. Her name's Charlotte Webb. It's simply amazing what it has done for her. Living in Florida, we didn't have an option due to the fact that marijuana was not legal. So we researched different states that cannabis was legal, and we came across a small town in Calaveras County called Mountain Ranch. 5 years ago, my brother decided to move to Calaveras County so he could get the benefits from the farmers who grow in this county. I can say we've come a long way, and he's nearly 2 years seizure-free. Cannabis is more than a plant to me. It's a cure for people who don't have a choice, and no pharmaceutical medications work. The worst thing a parent or sibling can do is see someone suffer and you can't do nothing to help them. So I come to you today to ask you, as a member of your community, to please not take away the only medication that has helped my family find a cure for this horrible disease. I became a nurse to help people who need help, but especially I became a nurse for my brother and those like him who need me. I also urge you to take into consideration that without the farmers, we don't have access to the medication. I also want you to take into consideration the same way when you go to a doctor and you have high blood pressure, diabetes, whatever it is, they have to put you on different kind of medications till they find what's right for you. The same thing works with cannabis. You don't just find the first flower that you see and it works for you, take the first edible and it works for you. It doesn't work like that. Putting a number on the amount of plants that people are limited to grow gives us a limited amount of strands to be able to use. As myself, I volunteer in a dispensary in town. I can't tell you how many patients come for the first time due to pain, and they don't know what to take. So we give them different things so we find what works for them. As a volunteer, I tell you that 12 plants per person is not enough for someone to grow, for us to be able to give our patients the correct medication for them to take. Thank you, and God bless you all.
I'm Richard Anderson. I'm a retired school administrator. I've lived in this county since 1973. That makes me 43 years on the land in Calaveras. For the last 35 years, I built my home near Calaveritas, and it was taken down by the Butte Fire. Totally lost everything. I'm considering rebuilding on the property that I have, but unfortunately, unlike most of the conscientious farmers in this room, I'm now surrounded by growers that I guess don't come up to speed. I wanted to share my observations of my local neighborhood community in the wake of the lack of guidelines for growing marijuana in Calaveras County. Most of what I am to relate is anecdotal, unfortunately. There's no hard data to share, no bank accounts to examine, no firm results of grows attempted and or accomplished during the Wild West that has descended recently upon my community. 1 year prior to the fire, 3 grows were started in adjacent properties to our home, properties eagerly sold by realtors happy to juggle multiple offers from out-of-area buyers for more than list price, some from as far away as Southern California, some as close as Stockton. Immediately after purchase, truck and transfer load trailers haul multiple yards of soil, usually in the early morning, that were deposited in large containers visible from our road that cascaded down imposing slopes and without regard to water runoff issues or pesticide applications that mostly have turned my downslope seasonal pond into an uninspiring shade of green. Attempts to contract the new neighbors, who evidently don't own the land, merely work it, produce locked gates, barking dogs, surly responses to requests to help maintain the roads that we've been doing for the last 35 years. Those roads, the workers traverse at unsafe speeds without a state license plates and new Toyota trucks. Of course, late summer produced the smell of 1,000 skunks for weeks on end, silent testimony to the large number of towering plants bursting from their containers. These workers know how to goose Mother Nature and avoid the responsibility of land ownership. The floodgates are wide open after our supervisors here have leaned back on the throttle, or rather failed to apply the brakes to this 9-mile skid on a 10-mile road. I'm considering not rebuilding after the fire, not because of heartbreak or lack of monetary support. My insurance was very generous. But because the neighborhood is changing, I think for the worst. Absentee owners with no respect or responsibility to historic land holdings that go back over a century and a half here in Calaveras County are breaking my heart. I hope that you regulate severely, following maybe Humboldt County's guidelines on the ordinance that they just passed 3 weeks ago that require conditional zoning clearances, conditional special permits, conditional use permits, and any and all state licenses and permits that are required by law.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
To wait for new contradictory initiatives in the fall election
Mr.
and
Anderson.
coming state regulations. I'm
Thank
just
you.
about done.
You are done. You had your 3 minutes like everybody else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm MB Black Eagle, a county resident for over 20 years. And this is kind of impromptu for me, but I'd like to bring up a few points. First of all, I was sitting on my couch a couple of months back, and an authority came on and he said, the biggest gateway drug in this nation is prescription painkillers, not marijuana. Now, I'm stuck in the middle, literally. I'm not growing yet, but on one side is a responsible grower, clean, respectful. They even watch over our property, especially during the Butte fire. On the other side, for several years now, cartels have come in and trashed the property, grown gunfire, wild parties, trash, fences, you name it. So, of course, I beg you to regulate this industry and support the responsible growers in Calaveras County, please, because I think that would finish the cartels. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alice Montgomery. We live in Arnold, California, my husband and I, and he's not here right now. He left, and so he's going to have to speak for himself. We have the good fortune of living in Arnold. We also get to travel around the country during the year, and we've seen and talked to a lot of different people on this subject, actually, and who would ever deny someone who has a horrible headache, has cancer, has seizures, who, you know, by the grace of God, is going to tell them, no, you can't have medicinal marijuana. If it works for them, they should have it. The other part of that is, there's another part of it, though. If you go to the medicinal dispensary in Arnold, I don't know if it's actually really organic or if it's really what. So I went in and asked, and I really didn't get an answer. Who is the third party that tests it for fungus, bacteria, and traces of heavy metals? My background is a flaming environmentalist. I also have a master's in environmental management from USF. That means that I can see and taste, I know what chemicals are. So I had a really good time this past week. I went and did some field trips. I guess I don't look very threatening. So I may not get very many hands on this, but I went and looked. I like all of you. But I went and looked and snooped and went on some farms in and around the Butte Fire area. That's as close as I will tell you. I went to 3. 1, I found nothing really wrong. 1, I see a farmer here today who's part of that farm who I found malathion on the farm. I know what malathion is. I grew up with a fruit ranch. Malathion is a pesticide that shouldn't be used. The 3rd farm, I found something I can't even believe I found in the state of California. I found DDT. DDT. Yes, I did. I'm not lying. I found DDT. So when they tell me it's all organic and all wonderful, I would say, no, it's not organic. It's not all wonderful. And I hope that you give me the respect that I've given you because I didn't leave at noon. I stayed. Now, so you have sativa and you have indica. Sativa is the up one that makes you giggly, and indica is the down one that helps you be calm. And then you have many hybrids. That's what I found out by doing the tiny bit of due diligence I've done. Okay, so the guy that I really, really respect, Sanjay Gupta, who is a CNN correspondent and neuroscientist, said that he used to be pro-cannabis. He isn't anymore. Columbia University Department of Public Health has found in what's tested, 1 in 9 fatalities on the road involve cannabis. That's only the ones that are tested. That's not all the fatalities on our road. In our bucolic country roads, we don't need more of that on our 2-lane roads. We don't need another medical marijuana facility in Arnold. I can't imagine that everybody here is just on to medical marijuana. There's so few people that need it. Those that need them, God help them, they should have it. So please be careful on your regulation. I know you guys are very wise and will do what's right for us. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your time. My name is Dolores Nugent, and I came to this community almost 15 years ago with my husband. And what I'd like to tell you guys is I used to be a drug and alcohol counselor, okay? And the information that I have varies from what I've been hearing. I am pro-cannabis. I've been growing for a number of years with my son. I can tell you that in the drug and alcohol communities, 50% of the narcotics that are manufactured in this country are fed to us. Okay? Those are statistics that you can't really get around. Okay? You just can't. And 80% of all of the drugs that are manufactured in the world, we consume more than our share. And when my husband passed away 7 years ago, I didn't have high blood pressure. He had it. The minute he died, I got it. I was 199/99, and I was ready to stroke out. And being the drug and alcohol counselor, I didn't want to take medications. Okay, the alternatives, it took a while, okay? They put me on 5, 6 different things. My son says, you need to try and do something different. And so I did. And so I am drug-free. I've also been 25 years sober. So I've seen hundreds and hundreds of women and children in this circumstance where heroin and crack and cocaine in other forms have ruined their lives. I don't see that with medical marijuana. I just flat don't see it. If those women had been coming in to my facilities on marijuana and nothing else, I don't think that the outcome would have been the same. This is a really interesting debate. I'm agriculturally zoned, so I'm kind of cool with how that all goes down. But I'm also kind of really new with all of this, and I know how substance abuse can take you down the wrong path. 30 seconds. Okay. And I just want to thank you and just really, really please be really careful about what you do with this. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Royal Garrison Jr. I'm also your local NAACP president for the Motherlode. I'm going to keep this real short, but I do have a couple concerns over a couple of the statements that were said here on labeling people. Regardless of how people think, I've been here since 1981. My father is the same black man that's the only black man that's in Little House on the Prairie, Back to the Future 3, Bad Girls, so on and so forth. Most of this county knows me. I'm not the Jamaican gang that I've just heard that I've been called, or the cartel. I am a Rastafarian because I represent Yosemite's Buffalo Soldiers. I have a right to do that. But let's not label people because they're Japanese, Mexican, or Jamaican or black as a title. As far as that goes, we have a tweak problem in this county that runs with whites, blacks, Mexicans, and everything else. I don't want to see or don't want this board that I grew up with, and I know a lot of you, to be labeled or let somebody label us. That's all I'd like to say, but keep that in mind, that not everybody looks a certain way is a certain way. We are just normal people. I just so happen to be a Rasta. Thank you.
Supervisors, my name is Mark Russell. I'm here today to discuss, well, good regulations. I'm opposed to a ban, although I support local control. Over the last 15 years, I've been growing my own cannabis as a patient. I've taught patients how to grow their own. I've opened dispensaries in both Santa Barbara and Goleta, California, and I've helped people throughout the state organize collectives the right way by being compassionate and giving a certain percentage of their cannabis away for free. You know, I've traveled all over the country. I've traveled all over the state. I've been to a lot of supervisor meetings. I've gone to federal protests. I've met the federal medical marijuana patients that actually receive cannabis from the federal government, the farm in Mississippi. I have relationships with all of them. The people here today are some of the best organized people that I've actually come across in all of my fights. I stand up for patients' rights. Sacramento Cannabis Therapeutic Conferences, I'm all over the place. And I'm really impressed by your community and the support and the drive that they have to come in front of their local government and share their opinions on what they believe and what is right. To his conclusion, it is the moral authority and responsibility of a government to support and protect the rights of all people. It is also the responsibility of a government to take no action that will adversely affect the free exercise of those rights. That is a basic and paramount function and purpose of government. It is the very reason why government even exists, is to support and protect and enhance the right of all people, all rights, not just them. Thank you.
Marty Crane, Valley Springs. I just wanted to say that through the Butte Fire and my association with Red Cross and the Volunteer Center and wherever, I have experienced a lot of the trials and challenges of our friends in District 2. And I have shared this many times that if something like this has to happen to you in your life, being in a tight-knit community is probably your best safety net. And I wanted to say that when my friend Richard Anderson and his wife Mary, who owned Lost Hills Nursery for years, I don't know how long, when he came and spoke and shared his challenges, his neighborhood challenges, I just want to encourage this wonderful, tight-knit, supportive community to rally around the situation that the challenges that he is facing, and help him resolve those issues in whatever way is possible. So I challenge us all to be our better selves and go for it. So go be fabulous.
Good afternoon. My name's Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs.
I'm a 42-year resident of Double Springs, a taxpayer, a voter, and a volunteer all those years. I was instrumental in creating the Women's Crisis Line back in the early 80s. And in the late 90s, I became a care provider for a gentleman who was epileptic and suffered from brain cancer. He used cannabis for pain relief, for sleeping and eating disorders, for the suppression of psychosis and paranoid schizophrenia. He smoked it in a pipe for a while. Then he vaporized it in a contraption that had a filter on it. He drank it in tea. He ate it in various foodstuffs like cookies and sauces. He got it in pill form from UC Davis, something called cannabinol, which was prescribed by his oncologist, his brain cancer surgeon. He used it in topical use in creams, gels, lotions, soaps, and oil. He didn't necessarily get high off of it. It was a medicine that was used to treat the conditions that he suffered from, and the results of the treatment and the medicine that he had to take for radiation and chemotherapy. I believe medical marijuana will become recreational use, as it has in Colorado. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but pretty soon afterwards. And I think all of this rigmarole and restrictions someday will be moot, because it will be legalized. And we've gone through a lot of hoops getting to this point. I have 4 words I'd like to leave you with, that it's coming from the bottom of my heart, with all the sincerity and respect that I can muster. And my 4 words are: more cannabis, less asphalt.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Finkus, and I'm from the Wilseyville area.
You have to talk into the mic.
I'm sorry, I'm from the Wilseyville area, and I've been a grower in this county for 20 years, since I was diagnosed with cancer for the 2nd time. I chose not to use chemotherapy, and I'm still alive after my third diagnosis of cancer for a different strain of cancer. As far as limitations to how many plants we can grow, we don't know season to season how big a plant's going to get. We don't know what quality it's going to have until we have a chance to try it. We can go off of what is in literature, what we find on the computers, but that doesn't really tell us exactly how it's going to work for us. I've tried hundreds of varieties, and I've just come across a few now that work for me, where I don't have to have 10 or 15 different varieties to supply my personal need. In my experience, I use oils, I use baking products, I make everything, I grow everything myself. It's well controlled by myself. I use no pesticides whatsoever. I don't have water runoff. I don't have fertilizer problems. Everything is completely organic. But I cannot be limited to 12 plants, because in June, I'm going to be suffering so bad that I won't be able to make it until July. I consume at least a pound a week to 2 weeks in using it in flowers, oils, tinctures, smoking it in vaporizers, smoking it in a pot, in my pipe. I can't live without it. Most of these people in here can't live without it. And regulating such a small amount is absurd. You're going to force us to sit there and go bankrupt because we can't afford to go to the clubs to purchase the medication that we need because we can't grow enough. And if I say more, I'll go into tears. So thank you for your time.
Okay. So now we'll go into any more public comments before we do this? Any more public comments at all? Okay, great. So let's go into discussing the ordinance and deliberations. Do you want to go straight into it?
So for purpose, can you hear me? For purposes of today, staff would like to get clarification on the specific alternatives that were outlined in our staff report, as well as anything else that was brought up in today's public comments, as well as anything that the board would like to direct us on that you've previously directed us on. So at this point, I would like to just start with going through the alternatives, and then the board can discuss it, ask for any additional public comments on it if that is what the chair would like. You indicated earlier that you had that desire. And my main purpose is to get clear direction on broad policy decisions. You don't have to get down to the nitty-gritty of things, but if you give broad policy direction to us, that gives us a little bit of leeway to craft the actual nitty-gritty language. So that's what I would ask, is for policy direction, and then we can craft it and move forward. Bringing it forward, we have the option of having another town hall to allow public comment, as well as all of the public comment and the public input that would be available during the Planning Commission, and then it would ultimately come to the board for final adoption. So for starting today, one of the main issues that we heard come up on multiple occasions is how the board would like to, or if the board would like to create a temporary approval or other mechanism to basically handle the situation between adoption of our ordinance and the state implementation of their permitting scheme. Currently, like I said earlier, there is not something in place to allow for this interim period. So if that is something that the board would like, we can certainly craft language to allow for licensing in the interim. I understand that at the state level, the state does require evidence that a permit applicant is in compliance with local jurisdiction codes. The way that we currently have it drafted is that they would get something saying that they meet all of the standard requirements, standard regulations, zoning, setbacks, so on and so forth, but that the actual permit would not become effective until they obtained the state permit. Because of the length of time for any applicant to get the state permit, it might be beneficial, and if it is the board's direction, we can craft additional language to accommodate for that 2-year window. We did this because we anticipated piggybacking on a lot of the state processing, such as background checks and other issues that is already going to be taken care of at the state level. It seemed redundant to do it at the local level as well. But if it prevents compliance for 2 years, certainly if the board directs us to draft something to accommodate or to address this 2-year window, we can certainly do that. So that would be the first area that I would like direction on, and then if the board wants, or if the chair wants additional public comment on this topic, you can solicit that.
I'm going to let the board speak. Anybody want to comment on this?
Yes, that makes sense.
I wish I could say it was that easy, but there's a lot of process that goes along if we were to say, yes, we agree with that. And the process is expensive. We heard multiple times about the involvement of the different county agencies, and some of them I'd never even thought of until today. Law enforcement's obvious, code enforcement, the ag department, probation department, planning, environmental health. If they're all part of this temporary approval, how do we
start off with that?
How do we pay for that? and I know when I've talked to you before about this, Council, there was an indication then that it was to be a separate ordinance. Am I confused on that, or?
That would be for taxing. We do have the ability to write into or have a resolution that's separate that set the fees for such a program, and the fees would cover all of the costs to administer the program. So that is something that can be done. It's not the amount of the fees would not be set in the ordinance. It would basically say that that fees would be collected to administer the program, and that the fees would be set based on resolution, so that we would be able to consult all of the staff, determine the estimated cost of administering the program, and then bring that fee structure to the board for adoption, and then we would be able to collect those fees for processing permits and the overall cost of the program.
And that our ability to collect those fees would be at once, if I'm correct, because of taxation, that it might take a year for that to catch up to us, if even at that. And the cost of administering this, I'm sure that if we were to hire extra people for all of these positions that I just mentioned, they're not going to wait a year to be paid. So we would be able to create an ordinance in conjunction with this that has the cost that could be done at once.
The fee is separate from the tax. So as long as you keep the fee structure separate, there's the fee, and then there's taxation. Taxation has to go to the people during the vote. So
Correct.
Keep that. That will take time.
Correct.
For the fee, yes, the fee will come forward. We would work with staff to try and make it as quick as possible. We can start working on a fee structure pending. I mean, this is still a lengthy process, hopefully shorter rather than longer, to bring this back to the board for adoption. But the hope would be that we would have a fee structure in place shortly after adoption of the ordinance. Keep in mind, when a planning and zoning ordinance is ultimately adopted by the board, so remember, it goes to the Planning Commission for first reading, it comes to the board for adoption. When the board actually takes action to adopt that ordinance, it still has 30 days to go into effect, and that's by state law. And so there is that 30-day window that we can bring forward the fee resolution, so we can have the fee structure in place so that everyone knows what the cost of administering the program would be before the actual implementation of the program.
Thanks for clarifying that.
So what we'll be asking our potential applicants that they have to deposit their fees for the county-based permits, and we don't have an idea what that cost is going to be, but we can determine that within 30 days of the application or accepting the ordinance, correct?
Well, our hope is we would start working with all of the affected departments to estimate the cost it would be to that department to administer the program, and then we would look at how we would have to do a fee study to determine the cost for the permit, basically.
Okay. And that application would be in effect for a period of time, keeping in mind that the state is looking at 2018 to start issuing their permits and certifications. Is there any requirement that we need to consider about whether or not that application would still be enforced at the end of 2 years without being issued yet?
Our current draft ordinance requires renewal annually, so we would likely bring forward the initial application fee and then have an additional a renewal fee. So anytime their permit had to be renewed, there would be a separate annual fee for processing the renewal.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
One more quick question. And if I remember correctly, the fee without me finding it in here, is structured for different levels of cultivation, correct? In other words, I don't think there was a fee for home care, but then you talk about something larger, there is a fee.
The fee is attached to the permit. And so the amount of the fee would have to be determined through a fee study, which would be done. That would be an option to have a tiered fee based on the type of permit, if the permit would require additional staff time to process for a larger grow, or if there was additional resources that were needed, for instance, for certain types of permits. That could be a tiered fee, yes, but that would have to be done through a fee study.
Thank you.
So, much easier. So I'm for a temporary approval of sorts, a mechanism to kind of get the ball going, you might say, because I know the state is going to take a couple of years that we're thinking right now, and it could be longer depending upon how that works at the state level. So, I look at having something that that people can come into, I'm going to say planning for right now, and to be able to register themselves as somebody who is in the business now, and then being able to work through the permitting process at the local level, and would support that fee study based on the type of grow or what classification. So look at that as we move forward on a fee structure. I also, and I don't recall something in regards to the I know it was on an annual basis that we would have people coming in to apply again or re-register, or however it's called into play. So we might have 1, 2, 3 years of this kind of process depending upon the state level. So I think it's important that we start now locally so we can get some handle of control and be able to grow with this ordinance.
Let me say something. So, I've been listening to all the folks in their public comments. How many of you folks came in here today thinking that one of the options was to ban? That's what I thought. In my mind, that's the first question that we should be asking. So I'm going to pull the board to ask, are we going to ban?
I have no interest in banning.
No.
Give me a minute, please, Chair.
Okay.
No with extreme conditions.
Okay, Steve?
I've listened to a lot of people here today, and even the people who are against it are not wanting to ban it. But in reality, there's no middle road. If you're allowing it, you're allowing it. If you're banning it, you're banning it. So no, I do not want a total ban of it.
So I could say I want to ban it. It'd be okay, wouldn't it? There's 4 of them. Yeah, well, that can go either way, so it's okay. My thought is this has been in this county for forever, and the county's been through many things. Been through a lot of different drugs, a lot of different economic downturns, upturns, and I've spoken to many folks that I actually grew up with around here, and also many of the business owners that have come forward. And the way I look at it is if we ban it, how do you pay for that? The second thing is in my mind, the way I think about it is if we have to be able to regulate, to be able to enforce. So if we have an enforcement policy and we can't pay for that, then we need to regulate further. So that we have to have that balance, because it's not just for it's for the people that have lived here for forever. Like earlier, this gal come up here and talked about her. They had 9 years of her life just to get up here and build their dream home, and we need to be able to make sure that she feels good in her home too. So, how do we do that? So this is in my mind is the beginning of the process, and so I don't see banning as an option, but I do feel that we need to work closely together to make sure that we have the right regulation for everybody, or as many people as we can, anyhow. So. So I asked that because it seems kind of weird to start on this when we haven't even decided if we're going to ban it or not. So I'd want to put that out there so that we can put that to rest. Okay.
Chair, may I have a quick comment. And from my perspective, the board had already directed us on not banning it. So at this point, if in my mind, banning was not something that was on, everything is on the table, I suppose. So is there anything else that the board previously directed us on that the board would like to pull and potentially alter the direction that you've previously given us before we jump into these other issues that have come up?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
A real quick comment that came up under this was the fees, and that is usually done by the weighted rate of the cost of an employee multiplied by the time it takes to do a task. So whether you do it on a sliding scale or if it's a straight out fee, the bottom line is it just covers the costs. As everybody knows, government cannot make a profit, but we can cover the cost. So it literally is a very simple task of calculating what the cost would be. So I just want to clarify that for the board.
So number one, the direction that I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you would like for staff to write into the ordinance allowing cultivation to occur pending state approval as long as they meet the other local requirements and local permitting scheme.
Well, we heard that from two of the supervisors, but not the three others.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Mike.
I have a very serious concern about establishing what those fees are going to cost. And once again, in just fairness to the growers, they need to know what they're getting into when they put that application in there. Now, having said that, those fees, in my opinion, should include all the areas that we need to explore that we discussed here today. Specifically, the enforcement factor and the prosecution of those folks not abiding by this ordinance. Now, we talked a lot here today about the good guys and the bad guys. Now, we know who the good guys are because they're all going to go down by white hats. There's a lot of bad guys out there that aren't in this room and maybe in this room that we need to effectively deal with, both on our law enforcement, our enforcement, and your success as a grower. So very importantly, we need to look at all these fees now. You need to know what you're getting into, folks. And right now, I am pushing, and I would highly recommend establishment of a law enforcement program, not to last for a year or 2 years, but ongoing, because if you're in this game for 2 years, you're in the wrong game. Sorry, but that's the way I feel.
For question, answer to question number one.
In response to Supervisor Oliveira, I did want to also include the fees cover the administering the program. A lot of the concerns that you just brought up would be dealt with fines. So enforcement of it is a separate arm, and so that would be addressed with fines. Fees are for the permitting of the use.
Correct. Is there any background checks in any of the applications?
Well, that is the direction that we're looking to get, because originally we were looking at the state background rather than having a redundant background check. If it's the direction of the board that you would like for us to draft language to allow for the program to start earlier than the state permitting program, then I would recommend that we look at a background check at the local level, but that is ultimately a board policy decision.
Well, I would hope that if we were to implement that the state then could we could talk to them about accepting that as a part of their process. Because if we are moving ahead basically before them, then and we're doing, I guess they could ask for it again, but if we already have it, then why? So, I mean, that's something that we'd have to work out there. I mean, we'll have to work this thing out right from the get-go for, everything really. So, so I'd like to get back to, there has to be something in there for law enforcement. We haven't discussed that yet, but the Sheriff's Department may and the CHP may have something else to say about that. So, as time moves on, then maybe that's something that can be put in there as well.
So just for clarification purposes, is the board directing us to implement this or add language to the ordinance for this or not?
Yes or no?
What was the question?
Does the board wish to create a temporary approval or other mechanism to allow cannabis cultivators that are anticipated to meet state and local requirements for commercial grows to operate legally pending state?
Well, you still have a question on that issue.
Okay.
So if we have an applicant that applies to the county, and we charge them their fees for that application, and the state does not enact their certification program for 2 years, shouldn't we look at building in some type of enforcement or some monitoring or code compliance fees during that 2-year period? That has to be known at the time the applicant makes their application.
And again, the application fee would be something that would be put into place for putting the permit in place. All of code compliance and law enforcement, a lot of that would be under enforcement, which would be fines.
Okay. All right, but
that would be something
should be
that,
considering this on the onset.
But keep in mind that is something that would, in fact, be something that, if the program is in place, that is something that we can pursue.
Well,
we don't have to wait for the state permit process to be done.
But there may be a possibility that in the application process, in the inspection process, there may be something for code compliance or the Sheriff's Department to be involved in. So that could be included in that fee.
Exactly, and that's what the fee study would be, and that's what would be brought to the board for consideration and a resolution to set the fee.
Okay, as long as we have a process in dealing with that issue.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Steve? You want to use mine?
I'll use Mike's, he's got it all warmed up.
We don't even know what that is.
Does the board wish to create a temporary approval or other mechanism? Yes. That's what you're asking me. Right?
Okay. Then that's your direction for county council.
With or without background checks?
With.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would concur with Supervisor Kearney, with.
Will that be with everything, even the personal gross?
That would be the question of the board. Is that what you would like? We can draft it either way.
Started off there, huh?
Sorry. Background checks for personal grows. Yes or no?
No on personal, but I do have a question on when you do a background check. Do we even know what we're checking on the background? I mean, that's not clear to me. I don't know if it's been developed in the state regs just yet. So, you know, it's like I was in business of senior living, and we had background checks, and it was very specific per code as to what you were looking for. So that would be my concern here. You know, what are we looking for? Is there anything in the state law now that says this is ABC, who can or who cannot? So that would be my question as we try to come to an answer.
Yes, Supervisor Ponte, the state does have a very concise description of what they're going to be looking for. The state basically said that I think there are what they consider violent felonies. There's a long list of those. It's pretty technical, and some misdemeanors involving, I believe, substance abuse. There might be some other ones that could be a disqualifier. There is the state has a system for considering certain cases and overriding an automatic no, but basically it would give the way the ordinance is written right now, it simply cites to the state and says that we would be requiring for personal grows and primary caregiver grows the same background check, looking for the same things that the state does and exercising discretion in a similar manner. So the board can choose to keep that or not. It was just written in there because otherwise there is no background check for either of those. The state's not going to be conducting those. So that would be the question we're asking the board.
We also have a background check process for the dispensaries under the current ordinance. So any dispensary operator or employee has to go through a background check that's already part of our code. So we could use that system as well for any of the other aspects of marijuana business.
So, you know, I would try to follow those tracks instead of creating another level or layer or whatever might be. So I would be supportive in pursuing what state law is defining in regards to that.
Just for commercial?
Commercial.
Yes, just commercial. And the other, you know, because I'm looking at the big picture, so when we get into all sorts of other things. But for the personal, I'd say no, and for everything else, I would say yes, per the state law regulations that they're looking for.
And what about primary caregivers?
Yes.
Is it required into state law?
No.
I would say no.
So does primary caregiver already have a background check to be a primary caregiver? I don't know that answer.
I don't believe so, no.
Do they in IHSS? Okay. You know, it's for me, when the person is responsible for somebody else, it's kind of like, you know, caregiver, nurse type. I think they need to be checked to make sure they're responsible. There's a reason why IHSS, I guess, did it. I think it's a good idea to go ahead and for a primary caregiver to have a background check.
It's for abuse or violating welfare fraud.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm following the point that you said.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the state laid out. I think it makes sense.
It's in AB 266, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I've read it there.
Okay.
So for Supervisor Ponte and Supervisor Wright, I have no for personal and primary caregiver, yes for commercial. The other, and from what I gathered from Supervisor Edson, was yes for primary caregiver, I assume yes on commercial, and I'm not clear if you said yes or no on personal.
No, not on personal.
Okay. So then I need,
Yes on commercial, no on caregiver or personal.
okay. So no for personal, no for primary care, and yes on commercial for background checks. Moving on to the second one.
We have Supervisor over here.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No,
I was
that's
just
okay.
counting the numbers.
It's been a long day.
I apologize.
Yes on commercial, yes on caregiver, no on personal.
It's 3-2. Okay. So then we can move on to does the board want to ask for any additional comments or anything? Move on to the second question.
Let's move on to the second question.
Does the board want the ag commissioner to be the primary inspection and enforcement official for cultivation sites? Now, this was something that was brought up, and there was some concern about it. There have been comments on it. I just want to make sure that it's clear that this ordinance is ultimately a land use and zoning ordinance. Enforcement, we can certainly bring Kevin Wright into the fold of enforcement within it, but it is ultimately for permitting process and the permitting scheme that would typically be handled by the planning department because it is a land use and zoning ordinance.
So I support that, but I do want the ag commissioner's involvement because I see as this progresses in the future that this becomes part of the ag office.
And as the planning director, I'm more than happy to have Kevin's assistance in any kind of inspection associated with the agricultural aspect of the business. And we would work closely with his office in that component of it.
Yeah, what I said earlier in the meeting, I think having some kind of a combination of the two offices working on that would be a good idea.
Collaborative effort.
Well, so that's okay for the gross, but what about the rest of it? Because there's everything from irrigation to buildings, and does that just follow a regular process, or is it's a similar process, or it'll follow through with the process that we have in place?
Typically, when a permit is processed through planning, certainly Mr. Maurer would chime in if you would like. If it is a land use and zoning permit, planning reaches out. When a permit application comes in, depending on what the permit type is, they then reach out to all of the affected departments and other agencies that would have the ability to comment on the application. Do you want to add anything else to that?
So that's absolutely right. And then if there are violations of the code, we work with the code compliance team to ensure compliance. And in some cases, we'll work with the sheriff's office if it is necessary. We coordinated closely with the sheriff's office for the inspection and review of the dispensary permits that we've issued in the last couple of years. And I think that working relationship can continue with this. These new aspects of the business.
Okay, so personally, I'd like to see the a process developed actually, which would include either the sheriff or code compliance for sure. We have to bridge that relationship somehow, and I feel that they need to be a part of the process all the way through that when the enforcement comes along, they're going to want to know exactly what's there, what's going on, who they're contacting, and all of that. And I think it's really important that they're involved in it.
I'm sorry, they are referring
Sheriff's
to
Department.
Sheriff's Office? Okay.
So that's something that has to be developed, I think.
Certainly, that is something that can be developed. Again, today I'm looking for broader policy decisions, policy direction.
That's what it says, though, enforcement official for cultivation sites as a part of that.
Right. In the current ordinance lists the sheriff and or the authorized deputies or designees of either the code enforcement officer or the sheriff. So with this, we would include the ag commissioner as an enforcing body for the code. So the sheriff's office already has the enforcement authority.
So you're just going to include the ag?
Correct.
Okay.
But the permitting process is through
And
planning.
so is environmental health also involved in that already?
The ag commissioner is under environmental health.
All right. You got any, I mean, you want to add anything to that, Jason? You want to come up to the mic, please? I know he looks a lot different right now because he shaved his beard off, but
it was for this meeting. Jason Baitzer, Director of Environmental Health. For purposes of the ordinance, a commissioner would carry out the functions of the rules, regulations, and inspection enforcement for growing, cultivation. For environmental health, we already have the county ordinance for the well, for permitted well source. Also, under state law, there's rules and regulations for hazardous material. If they store over 55 gallons of diesel fuel, let's say, it doesn't have to be included in this ordinance. We are still the regulatory agency for agriculture operations and inspect those facilities and coordinate with the Ag Commissioner's office when we do those inspections. So we already have a coordinated effort in place for other agricultural operations where state law gives us that authority to regulate.
Question, Mr. Chair?
yes.
Mr. Bozer, how do you get on property without a search warrant to affect those laws? Enforce them?
For our inspection program?
Well, let's say you have a violation. How do you get on the private property without writing a search warrant?
We'd have an inspection warrant. Otherwise, we have
And
a...
who's responsible for writing those warrants?
Our department, or we
Okay.
go through code compliance.
So you can, code compliance, so you actually have a code compliance officer?
No.
Because he's certified to write that search warrant, just like the sheriff's department is, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a process of getting on there.
We do.
Okay.
And a lot of times on complaints, we go on a property, people grant us permission to investigate our complaint. Otherwise, we'd have to go back for an inspection warrant to get on that property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, in addressing the question presented by council, does the board want the Agricultural Commission to be the primary inspection? I would say no, but to be included.
I would agree with Supervisor Oliveira. I would say the primary, since basically much of the question will be zoning, would be code enforcement, but it would also have to collaborate with the Ag Commissioner.
How about if we put, does the board want the Ag Commissioner to be included into the inspection process and enforcement official for cultivation sites, which would be under environmental health and management anyhow? Okay.
May I just reinforce real quickly that to reiterate what Mr. Baitzer stated, there are a lot of state laws already in place that already cover everything from hazardous materials to, as Jason also correctly stated, drinking water, water wells, et cetera. So with that said, remember, I'd remind the board that there are overriding state regulations for many of these programs that are going to be part and parcel of an operation. We can even include the building department in that and the building code requirements. So just to state that, and a reminder that there are many regulations that are already in place that some of these people are probably well familiar with already.
All right. So no sense in doing it twice. Okay. You okay with that, Steve?
Yeah.
All right. We're good with that. You got that?
I believe so.
Kind of figured you did.
Does the board want to adopt the planning director's previously recommended zoning requirements, which was the prior direction of the board on cultivation sites and dispensaries, or does the board wish to give different or alternative direction on the zoning locations for indoor, outdoor, nursery, all of the commercial, for the commercial industry, and primary caregivers.
I can tell you right off the bat, the one that I'm confused on, because I thought we had an ordinance for the dispensaries that was CP, and I don't know how all the other codes got in there, to tell you the truth, or the zones got in there. And so I thought CP was working. I wanted to change the distance, the site distance, a little bit to 1,500 feet instead of 1,000.
Sure.
But CP zone to me was working for our county.
So you're absolutely right that the current ordinance allows a dispensary only in the CP zone. Since we're going through an ordinance amendment, this was my recommendation as to where we could consider dispensaries to be located. And that would be changing the zones, we could consider them, but upping the permit requirement from an administrative use permit to a conditional use permit. They would also still retain the separation requirements, separation between existing dispensaries as well as all the sensitive uses. So while there would be perhaps more opportunity to place a dispensary in some communities, there would still be some limitations on that.
So Peter, if we go to the second to the last bullet item on the last page there, the next page over, it actually calls out this dispensary option on the board packet here, on packet page 10. Does the board wish to combine the dispensary ordinance with the larger cannabis cultivation? So if we just left the dispensary ordinance alone and didn't discuss that here in our ordinance, that would be fine too, right?
I think we still need to update the ordinance to be consistent with state law. But we could certainly leave the zoning standard as it is today.
That would be my suggestion, is to go ahead and keep the standalone ordinance, adjust it for state law requirements in the future, and not change the zoning any from that, like Clint was saying.
And that clearly is the board's prerogative.
Can we ask for a moratorium on dispensaries?
You could adopt a moratorium if you made the findings, but it's not on the agenda and it's not something
Can't
that's
do it now.
part of this package. It's certainly something the board could consider in the future.
Typically, moratoriums are put into place when a local jurisdiction is looking to alter the existing code so that not additional uses or applications come in while you are modifying something that is typically why it's used. Because we would just be making minor changes to our existing dispensary ordinance. The existing dispensary ordinance is still in effect, would remain in effect until any change to that existing ordinance. So as far as a moratorium, I guess my question would be, what would be the ultimate purpose?
Well, I'm not convinced that we need more dispensaries in the county. If we were to just recognize the ones that are here, I do have concerns about them replacing other businesses that exist. And that my concern would be to recognize the dispensaries that are open, which there seems to be one in every community at this point.
If that's the case, then if the board were to direct us to modify the existing dispensary code to essentially ban any, it would be the existing dispensaries would be a non-conforming use. Correct me if I'm wrong. If there were to be a ban on dispensaries, hypothetically, no future dispensaries would be allowed. But if it is an existing permitted dispensary, it could continue for the length of the permit as I'm sorry, it's late, my mind's Non-conforming use, thank you, sorry.
So we currently have 3 dispensaries, right, that are on the up and
Yes.
up?
Yes.
All right, so I would say leave the current dispensary ordinance as is, and we can take a look at that as we progress through all of this. But
So-
I'm comfortable with the way the dispensary ordinance currently is.
Well, I think we need to make some amendments to it to conform it to state law, but I think what you're saying is keep the zoning provisions.
Yes, I would
the
agree.
CP zone by administrative use permit. as
Whatever
is.
it takes to come into compliance with state law, but I'm okay with the CP2 zoning.
Yeah.
Did I hear you correctly? You're okay with the CUP rather than an AUP? Because the current code is an AUP
No.
in the CP zone.
No, I think you were talking about the
No.
CP zone.
Yeah, the CP zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the current,
Maintain the existing permit structure, just,
I just have a 1,500-foot thing in my mind that I hope that we could agree on. Up here, line of sight is really easy, so. Just to, reinforce the fact that we have, in my mind, enough dispensaries. That's why the CP was put in place. It's working. Sure would like to, it's something that is working now, and I would really hate for some smart person to come in here and try to circumvent that. So that's why I'm after a little longer sight distance.
so the site distance is a separate issue. If the board wants to chime in on that, it sounds like Supervisor Edson, currently, the site distance to sensitive uses is 1,000 feet.
Right.
And Supervisor Edson is proposing an increase from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet to sensitive uses. And I want clarification, are you referring to just dispensaries or to all commercial, any commercial?
Well, I'm just talking about dispensaries right now.
Okay.
I guess I'm right now just keeping it as is because of, as I've heard in the past on our dispensary ordinance, there's also some need for clarification on sensitive uses. So it sounds like, we may have to take a look at that in addition to a line of sight and coming into compliance with state law. So I just recall that from past discussions about cleaning up the definition of the sensitive use.
Yeah, anytime you come up with a number of feet, like setbacks is 30 feet that we're recommending here, or 1,000 feet, I mean, it's somewhat arbitrary, I think, and so I'd like to have a longer discussion at another date about what that really means on the ground, because to me, it's so dependent upon the specific location of the distance, rather than just having a universal setback or universal number. I think maybe having it more dependent on specific site location, or at least a longer discussion about that, so I could get a feeling for how long 1,500 feet is. I mean, a mile is 5,000, 280 feet. So
286. Okay, Mike.
Once again, addressing the question brought up for direction by the board. Does the board want to adopt planning director's previous recommended zoning requirements for cultivation sites and dispensaries?
Well, I was breaking it down first on dispensaries, and then we'll
Okay.
probably go through the other ones, so,
Are we talking about dispensaries now on this particular question issue?
yeah. Within that question.
I would go for no changes whatsoever in the zoning.
Okay.
Not the recommendations made by planning director in our draft, but leave the zoning requirements as is for dispensaries. And then we can discuss your limitations.
All right, Steve?
So like there's consensus there. So then with the other permitted uses, there were 2 different tables. One was on page...
Oh, wait, Steve has to weigh in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I still think that we should freeze the dispensaries where they're at right now. They seem to be causing, you've never heard of the issues with the cultivators that you've heard with the dispensaries. So the amount of feet, I just don't think it's an issue at this point. Stay with what we have.
Okay. I always got to try.
Okay.
All right. So, go ahead, next one.
I think that Mr. Maurer was looking for any additional direction on the other zoning areas
Right,
for
you want to break them
cultivation.
down one by one, Peter?
Okay, so let's start with the other commercial uses. Talk about dispensaries. As far as transporting or where we'd have a transportation center, we're proposing that it be permitted by right in the with a zoning clearance in the industrial zones and a conditional use permit in the commercial zone. A distribution center would be a conditional use permit in the C2 zone and administrative use permit in the industrial zone. Testing lab would be permitted with use permit in both the C1 and C2 zone, as well as with the zoning clearance in the industrial zones, and then any manufacturing would require a conditional use permit in the industrial zones.
Okay, guys, go ahead. No, we're on to the rest of them now.
Cultivation sites.
Peter, can you clarify on the outdoor type 2? Didn't we change that to AUP?
Well, right now I was just talking about the other commercial aspects, not talking about cultivation.
Okay.
And so breaking it down a little bit. That's on page 31 of your board packet, as well as up on the screen right now for those with really good eyesight. Yeah.
Okay, so I had a question on the manufacturing, because I understand that, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the manufacturing scheme, it also includes the making of the edibles?
Yes.
All right, so, you know, and to my knowledge, the making of the edibles is kind of like having a commercial kitchen versus a full-blown out, I guess, lab, if that's the right terminology or not. So is there any way to break out the manufacturing types?
As far as we're aware, the state law doesn't differentiate between the size. And so the same kinds of inspection and licensing is going to be required under the state scheme. So whether it's a very small scale operation or it's, you know, a major manufacturing plant, the state permitting is the same, I believe. So we thought it would just keep it simple and have, you know, the same permit for whatever use we have. And a lot of that has to do with just the security checks and those kinds of things that we're concerned about.
Okay, I guess, you know, the edible portion of it, because it's more of a commercial kitchen type of operation, it seemed like having it in an industrial zone is a little bit over the top. And I'm just wondering if we can perhaps, for the edibles anyway, talk about, you know, commercial space or the professional office space or something along those lines.
So this isn't someone that's making their own, you know, edibles for their own personal use or for caregiver. This is for manufacturing, for sale to dispensaries, and can be distributed, you know, elsewhere in the state. So it really is more of a manufacturing type of use than it is like a
yeah, I can
home
see that.
kitchen
I guess,
kind of thing.
You know, I kind of look at it as you have a bakery, and you know, it's the commercial kitchen. So, you know, I don't know commercial kitchens in industrial zones. might be okay if somebody wants to go that route, but I can also see it in some sort of zoning for commercial, the light commercial or the professional office type environment.
I see that industrial is fine with that, because, and if we need to adjust it later, we can do that, but right now, we don't even know what that looks like totally, so light industrial, general industrial is good.
Yeah, I do have a concern there. It's a kind of a broad brushstroke there with the manufacturing. Because if you do have,
Any type of
I think having a commercial aspect, a commercial zoning aspect to that would be more appropriate, similar to like what Debbie was saying as far as a bakery goes. So it'd be nice to break that out a little bit instead of just a straight industrial zoning, have a commercial zoning maybe.
Well, we could certainly add C2 if that's, the board's pleasure. If you think that the conditional use permit is too much for manufacturing in the industrial zones, that could be an administrative use permit.
Yeah, I think definitely looking at it, refining that, what that really is would be good, because, there's no sense to do overkill on that.
And I guess the other thing, there's two different types of licenses under the state provision. One is if you're using volatile substances in the manufacturing process versus non-volatile.
Yeah,
maybe we want to split that up into two categories, and administrative use permit for non-volatile and conditional use permit for the volatiles in the industrial zone, and maybe a conditional use permit in commercial zone for both.
That would be a good start.
I need a consensus from the board.
I'm giving my spot to Supervisor Curley.
I'd like to look at the AUP process for the non-volatile, which is more of the edibles, and look at the other zonings for commercial or professional office space.
So commercial is, let's say, downtown Arnold.
Well, we have three different commercial zones. There's the professional office zone, which is intended to be medical and professional offices, obviously. C1 is your sort of central retail business area. Here in San Andreas, downtown Murphy's, McCollum Hill, Arnold. C2 is general commercial, almost bordering on light industrial, more of your auto-oriented businesses, some light manufacturing, bakeries. I tried to bring up the zoning code, but suddenly I lost service here in the building, so I can't read the list of uses I could earlier today. So I think that it could be appropriate in the general commercial zone. I think that manufacturing would be inappropriate in the C1 zone or CP.
Yeah, I kind of like the way you have it there, but not the, what is Business Park M4?
That was actually created to, my understanding is to the development of sort of a comprehensive business park where you might have some manufacturing, some research and development, and it was also developed as a whole complex. We don't have a lot of M4 zoning in the county, but there are some places. It allows pretty much the same uses as the M2 uses, and that's why I thought it would be appropriate, since the uses are the same. It's more of how it's developed than it is the actual uses.
Well, okay, on dispensing, are you expanding it?
No, we decided that's changing. So
Okay,
we're keeping
so
dispensing. I thought that was a consensus. I thought that keeping
All right.
dispensing is the way it is.
Well, I'm still looking at that. I understand that. So you're asking if we should go with your recommendations for CUP in light M1, general M2, and business M4, correct? And I would say yes. I wouldn't want them any more liberal than that.
Good place to start.
But we're taking a look at manufacturing and dividing it up between volatile and non-volatile.
That's a question that we have for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
The board certainly could direct us to do that, but at this
So
point,
why don't
it's
we
not.
ask the question, do we want to break up the manufacturing into non-volatile or volatile? I would say yes.
Question, wouldn't we need to actually make a decision on whether or not we want to allow volatile? We haven't made that decision yet, have we?
Well, you previously made the direction for manufacturing of both. That was a prior direction to us back in December.
Okay.
So certainly if the board now wants to separate volatile versus non-volatile, have an AUP for non-volatile, a CUP for volatile, certainly we could draft it that way.
Still in light industrial?
If that was the direction of the board, yes. If the board wanted to not allow volatile, that is something the board can direct us to do. It is in the direction of the board. That is purely a policy decision.
And that can be done at a later time, or we have to do it right now?
I would hope that the board would be able to make a decision today so we can move forward with this ordinance, because this ordinance will not be coming back to the board until it's coming back after being vetted by the Planning Commission for final adoption.
Okay.
And any change that the board would ask at that point, we would have to reintroduce it, and it would have to come back. So it would just draw out the process. So any direction that the board can give us, the better.
All right, I'll say light industrial, general industrial only for manufacturing, AUP for non-volatile, and the CUP for volatile.
I concur.
I have issue with volatile and non-volatile issues. I'm not convinced that volatile is where we want to go. And that comes from law enforcement experience right here in our county and seeing the incidents that's happened. I think it's a dangerous operation. It should not be allowed legally.
I would concur with Chair Edson. The non-volatile general commercial AUP. And it also could go into light industrial, general industrial, and business park with AUPs. And I would say on the volatile side, keeping it in the light industrial, general industrial, and business park is CUP.
Just so I wrote down my notes clearly, the only change essentially would be to add the C2 for non-volatile manufacturing with an AUP.
No, not for me.
Okay, clarify, please.
Just M1 and M2.
So it not be permitted in M4 at all?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm losing track of the different board members' desires here. So, Chair Edson, your desire is for just M1 and M2 with an AUP for non-volatile and a CUP for volatile?
Yes.
And it not be permitted in C2 and it not be permitted in M4?
Correct.
Okay. Would the other board members like to express your desire for that change?
Yeah, I honestly think that the non-volatile, which is like a commercial kitchen, making the edibles, is most appropriate in the general commercial section. You know, I'm baking bread for all sorts of delis in Calaveras County, and I have a commercial kitchen. It's not open to the public, and it's a spot I have with a commercial kitchen to make my edibles to sell to others. So that's how I see it, and I think the general commercial is appropriate for that.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's similar to a bakery. We just learned the bakery is what is in the general commercial C2, so it seems like that would be a reasonable use in C2 as well.
I would concur. I'm sorry. I would concur with Supervisor Edson, although I still maintain my position on the volatile issue.
I'm going to agree with Mike. I've been reading this as fast as I can, and I know this is confusing and we're jumping around just a bit, but I have concerns about the volatile also. Otherwise, I do agree with the way the chair has presented it.
So then what I heard, is that there is a consensus of a majority of the board to not allow in C2 or in M4, to only allow in M1 and M2 for non-volatile with an AUP and volatile with the CUP. That's what I got from listening to all of those. Did I get that correct?
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the majority.
Well, that takes care of manufacturing.
Any suggested changes on testing, distribution, or transporting?
No.
No.
Okay, then we can move on to cultivation. Thought that was fun. So I think there are two major issues that I heard out there from public comments. One was whether or not cultivation should be permitted in the RR zone. And the second one is what type of permit should be required for the cultivation in any of the zones. I think let's start just with the outdoor cultivation. And we've actually combined outdoor and mixed light as one category.
What page are we on?
And that's on page 22 for the board members, your packet. So we're proposing that the zoning clearance be required for personal use or caregiver in any residential zone that allows a single-family residence. So not in multifamily, but from, for outdoor cultivation, not in R1. So in the RR zone, which is 1 acre if you've got public water and sewer, 5 acre minimum if you're on well and septic, up through the agricultural and timber zones. That would be permitted with the zoning clearance letter for personal use. The Class 1 license, which is up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation area, would also only require the zoning clearance letter, not permitted, originally proposed in the highway service or ag preserve zone. And then the Class 2 or Class 3 licenses would require a conditional use permit as originally proposed by planning. A nursery would only be allowed in the general agricultural zone with a conditional use permit. So that was the outdoor cultivation recommendation. Now, I had suggested that maybe processing that number of conditional use permits was not within the capability of our department, and suggested that you consider the zoning clearance letter for some of those that we now had previously recommended conditional use permit.
So, Peter, in this process of the license structure, are we taking into consideration one who has kind of their own nursery operation going on?
You know, I participated in a webinar last week, and one of the questions I asked was what happens in that situation where the cultivator starts indoor, moves to mixed light, and then goes to outdoor. There was not real clear guidance on that. The suggestion was I contact the state and find out what they intend, but since there's really no one there at the state yet to contact, not sure what the answer. So the way I understand much of the cultivation in the county occurs is they start indoors, they are moved to a greenhouse, a mixed light situation, and then move to outdoor at a certain time period, usually in 1st of June, for outdoor cultivation until harvest. The response was that that may actually require 3 different license types from the state. And I don't know what the answer to that question is.
I just want to add some clarification. For state law purposes, a nursery is only for immature plants. That's a separate license, and all that the nursery can sell is immature plants. So the state does carve out a separate category for people who are commercially growing immature plants for resale.
For resale.
But as far as the primary concern here is, the start to finish cultivation activity. I know some of the growers will purchase starts from a nursery and then, plant them and cultivate them from there. Others start their own here. And I guess the question is at what stage do we want to go to a higher level of permitting review with public hearings and CEQA analysis on every application for cultivation activity?
So would the board like to direct us on any changes to the chart pursuant to Director Mauer's recommendations, or would you like to keep it as you previously directed?
I do have a question on the outdoor type 2 and type 3. I thought we had at the last meeting adopted your recommendation for the zoning certificate.
I don't think any action was taken.
No.
I suggested it, but no action was taken because we knew it was going to be continued, and this gave you more chance to consider it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Zoning clearance certificate.
So we're still asking for a CUP in zone RR, outdoor mixed light. We didn't adjust that, correct?
Well, no adjustments have been made by the board.
Maybe you would like to go back through what you were recommending for the zoning clearance certificates versus what is previously directed.
Okay.
Well, if you're on packet page 22, maybe if you just point out if anything's changed on these graphs. I know the graphs very well, or the charts.
The charts are the prior board direction. So if Director Mauer could go through the chart and say these are the changes that you were recommending at the last meeting, that might be beneficial, since right now what's in front of the board is the prior direction that they gave.
Well, I'm interested in hearing about the zoning clearance certificate.
So we are proposed to create a new permit type called a zoning clearance certificate, basically to accommodate the 1B and the personal caregiver license type. They would submit an application. We would do the review, do the background check if necessary, or work with the sheriff's office to do the background check. Whatever we need to do to make sure that it's consistent with our code requirements. Perhaps an inspection by the ag department as far as the size of the cultivation area, whatever we need to do to ensure that they are meeting the standards that we have. And then we would say you're in compliance with our code requirements. Here's your permit. They could then, once the state scheme is in place, they could take that to the state to get their license.
Would that include a review by neighbors?
No. So it'd be similar to the issuance of a business license, just a little more robust review.
But this is a new certificate, right?
This is a new.
So we could put in send it out to the neighbors, right?
I guess the question I have was, what would be the purpose of that? We could notify them, and they would know about it. But unless we actually have a discretionary permit process where they could protest it and have a public hearing, then, I mean, it may be valuable, and that may be something we want to consider, is to notify your neighbors. I know there is some concern from some cultivators that they want to try to keep as low profile as possible to minimize theft and adverse recognition. We will have a record of these permits. It will be public information, so anyone that applies, someone could ask to see our list of permittees, and we'd be obliged to provide them unless there's some other reason that they would somehow be exempt from public disclosure. But I can't see any reason why that would be. So if we want to just provide notice that this is happening, that's certainly something we could do. But if we want to have a permit, discretionary permit process where we go to a hearing where the public can say, I don't want this next door, then that is the conditional use permit process.
Right, and I understand your concern there. If you alert everybody in the neighborhood that something's happening and they come, upset, and then there's no remedy. I mean, so what do you do then as a planning director?
Right.
I understand.
What's the difference between a zoning clearance certificate and AUP?
An AUP is a use permit. It is discretionary. It's very similar to a conditional use permit, except that it's approved by planning staff as opposed to going to a public hearing. But then we notify people, and they have a right to appeal that to the commission. Zoning clearance would be ministerial, so an AUP is discretionary.
No. The zoning clearance is what?
Is ministerial. So if they meet the standards, they get their permit.
Okay.
If they don't meet the standards, we deny it. One or the other, black and white. An AUP or a CUP is discretionary, and we can say, well, this would be good, but we want to apply these conditions to make sure it fits in, and it provides discretion. We could also just deny it because we didn't think it was the appropriate location.
But you can do that with your zoning clearance certificate as well?
No. With a zoning clearance, it's either they meet, it's like a building permit. They meet the code or they don't meet the code. If they meet the code, they get their clearance.
It's a little clear.
So a CUP is the only vehicle available where neighbors can voice their displeasure with this. Is that correct?
Either an AUP or a CUP.
AUP can fulfill that.
The only difference would be that I'm the approving authority on the AUP.
Okay.
Planning Commission is the approving authority on the conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we were to do a zoning clearance certificate, would it just only apply to this ordinance, or would it apply to things such as asphalt plants?
It only applies to this, as proposed, it only applies to this code. The board could add other uses to a permit process of that nature.
Thank you for that clarification. I think that when someone applies, there is a myriad of regulations that are going to have to be gone through and signed off on. So I'm good with the zoning clearance certificate. My question would be, is there a fee structure associated with this at this point, or would that come to us at a later date as we look at?
There is no fee structure yet. I'm working on that.
Okay. So I'm good on a zoning clearance certificate for these items.
Are you also
Excuse me, Supervisor Ponte, for all of them?
Yeah, when you say all of them, I'm talking about everything under 2B.
2B and 3?
Yeah,
3 and
that
3D?
was your initial or I shouldn't say, that's what you recommended at the last meeting,
Right,
but we
that's
took
correct.
no action
Yeah.
on? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
I would do a zoning clearance on both the 2 and the 3 categories.
So does that zoning clearance certificate, are you complete with designing that, or are there other things that could be added into it?
We could certainly add more things to it. We're not complete with that yet. We don't even have the ordinance in place yet to apply it.
Right.
So that would be something we would work on concurrently.
Okay. All right. So which would be pretty specific to this industry, actually.
Yes, definitely,
Could
very
be tailored
specific.
to it. Okay.
So if you have a zoning clearance certificate, then are we changing the CUPs to AUP?
No, it'd be a ZCC.
Where it says P, which would be, permitted.
Correct.
With the zoning clearance certificate. We'll change it to Z or something so it's clearer.
So when you go to 2 or 2B, 3 or 3B, that's going to be a ZCC?
So it would be the same across the board for all outdoor cultivation, with the exception of the nursery, which will still require a conditional use permit. As proposed by Supervisor Ponte, as I had recommended last time.
Yeah, and we could still.
Well, just so I'm clear, Director Maurer, what is the difference in an AUP than in a ZCC?
An AUP is discretionary. We do notify the public. They have the right to provide comments to me. I would consider those in my analysis and review of the proposal. I could approve or deny or conditionally approve the permit, and it's subject to appeal to the Planning Commission. And the zoning clearance certificate would just be like a building permit. It conforms, and we issue the permit.
All right.
And they would have to conform to all of the other
Everything
ordinance.
in this code.
Yes.
Director Maurer, is there an appeal process on that particular suggestion?
The process would be similar to what we have for a building permit, where if there is a non-compliance with the provisions, then we would enforce the code by revoking the permit.
Okay. I'm going to go for AUP.
I would be in favor of changing it to an administrative use permit. I would concur.
I would concur with Supervisor Kearney on that.
AUP. And then for
So-
nursery is CUP, right?
Right. We're talking about changing that. So,
It already has to be that way in the state.
So the recommendation then
City
across the
Colorado.
board is AUP?
well, I've heard from 3 supervisors, Supervisor Wright and Supervisor, I don't know if I got a clear decision of what you felt was appropriate. I don't think there's any proposed change from the zoning clearance for the personal caregiver or the Class 1 license. So then it's the 2 and 3, and I'm hearing that Supervisor Ponte believes it should be a zoning clearance. Supervisors Kearney and Oliveira believe an AUP would be an appropriate permit.
I
haven't-
have a question for you.
Sure.
What if we took the zoning clearance certificate and we just added a way of appeal? So it's kind of in between the AUP and a ZCC, since we are creating this anyway.
I'm not sure what the purpose of the appeal would be. Because again, if they either meet the code or they don't.
I think it would be to meet the requirement of 3 supervisors.
Well, I would like the neighbors to have.
We could certainly provide public notice.
Not necessarily public notice, but at least the neighbors, where you're living, should know what's going in around you.
I just want to chime in on the fact, with the difference between ministerial and discretionary actions. When you have a discretionary action where staff is actually deciding whether implementing something, that would bring in the appeal process. If it's ministerial, it's whether does it meet this requirement or does it not.
Right, and that's how it's usually worked, but there are occasions on the coast and in Tahoe, I know, where they have building permits that actually have there's appeal decisions that can happen on those building permits themselves because it's such a sensitive zone, and so that's kind of the idea. That's where I got the idea from, was kind of like a more evolved building permit in those specific municipalities.
I would just caution the board that if that's the direction you went in, that it would potentially bring in an argument of a discretionary action rather than it being.
Right, I think it would.
Then go with an AUP.
I think it would be, well, I'm trying to streamline it, so, but with giving the neighbors notice is the idea.
It may be an evolving thing that we have to.
Yeah, my concern with that, Supervisor Wright, would be the ability of an appeal to be heard and decided by the public. So I think we ought to leave it as an AUP.
So we could write into the code a notice requirement. I think once there is an appeal provision, unless its appeal is limited to whether or not they comply with the code provisions, that kicks it into a discretionary permit process, and also subject to CEQA. So we'll be doing CEQA analysis and full review for all the commercial grows on the class 2 or 3. We could certainly investigate the process that Supervisor Wright suggests and see if that's something that might provide a higher level of comfort for the rest of the board. But if you feel that an AUP is the appropriate process, then that's the way we'll write the ordinance.
Yeah, I just find it so ministerial, and not to belabor the issue, but I go back to the asphalt plant. The asphalt plant was an AUP, and it took months to get that resolved, and many appeals to both the Planning Commission and the board, being very costly to the county on staff and time. If we're looking at, there's a whole set of regulations in here that we are looking for people to comply with, and if we want this, folks coming forward and volunteering or voluntarily going through this permit process and working with us in this partnership per se, I'm just looking at something that you can look at, and it's, you meet all the requirements, and here's the certificate. I think if we get involved in AUPs and CUPs, I just think of the burdensome task that's going to be placed upon the planning department to facilitate all of these things. Would be very costly, and I don't know if there's a way for us to recoup that. As we talk about, those permit things are already in place in regards to what we charge. And, for $100, someone can file an appeal, and it's thousands of dollars of what it takes the county to process that. So that's my concern, looking at that. When it's very clear, there are all sorts of rules and regulations in here on these particular, license 1, 2, 3, etc. So that's where I was coming from in regards to a zoning clearance certificate, and I really like that idea when you presented it before, Peter. So you know on that end what it takes to process and what people need and are looking for and that sort of thing. Plus, it comes down to your decision, I guess, on an AUP.
Okay.
This brings up an issue that I kind of wonder. We have a lot of ladies and gentlemen out there that want to be good neighbors and want to be good growers. An AUP gives the folks that maybe don't have the education that we've got over the last 5 or 6 months. I think that gives them a chance to, number one, through the appeal process, to be educated to that. Once again, my concern is the ability for the public to appeal on the grounds which the county can live within. And I understand Supervisor Ponte's position too. But I think the ability to appeal a decision is foremost in this.
Remember, we
AUP.
I mean, this is not, like we're talking about a brand new industry. And that's the issue. There's no studies on it anywhere, really. We're going to probably be the study. And it may evolve into something that actually works, or it may get stricter because it doesn't work. So, I guess we have to have a starting point.
Right.
And keep an eye on it. And I mean, I feel we're pretty fortunate to have the folks out here that we do, because they've taken an interest in our county, and they lived here, most of their lives, actually. So I'm good with the AUP for now.
I haven't changed my suggestion. I'm
Still AUP.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear a consensus of the board of an AUP for 2, 2B, 3, and 3B then.
The majority.
Yes, the majority of the board.
All right, so we need to take a 10-minute break so that our person recording this can change gears. 10 minutes. Or thereabouts.